Welcome. I am Rob Goehring, the head of research for Echelon. On behalf of my teammates, it is my privilege to welcome today's esteemed speakers and guests to our conference on applied AI, where we focus on commercialization rather than just concept. Together with Christine Young and Steven Servavan from Originations, Asad Said, Peter Graham, Beng Lee from Investment Banking, Stefan Quenneville, and Mike Stevens from Research, we will be hosting the company presentations and questions. We would also like to note the strong contributions coming out of Wells Dietmar Newhouse towards the event today. We extend our thanks to an exceptional group of speakers who long prior to today impressed our team and built strong sponsorships within Echelon. As we move to start, we encourage everyone to reach out with questions directly to any of your hosts or post questions on the chat function where they will be visible to the hosts and the speakers to review. Now, we thought we would start the conference off with a bit of a surprise. And as such, apologies, Rob, we are very excited to have with us Well Health's founder, chairman, and CEO, Hamed Shahbazi, whose recognized leadership in Canadian technology and his long history with Rob Goehring make for a meaningful, and we are hoping, a surprise introduction. Hamed, welcome, and our thanks for kicking things off and introducing Rob.
Thanks, Rob Goehring. That's awesome. Yeah, I love this idea. This is, I think, the first time I've been invited to introduce someone else. I feel like I'm at the Oscars, but I'm very pleased to introduce a wonderful serial entrepreneur that I've had the pleasure of working with before, Rob Goehring, who's also a friend. And Rob and I worked together when he was chief marketing officer back in TO Networks and the last business that I operated. And maybe some of you were shareholders. We had a great outcome, and Rob did a great job. And obviously, I've followed Rob's career and his achievements and successes, and it's great to see him tackle a very important problem in bringing together a whole bunch of data and use AI to make sense of it to help companies safer. So it's a delight to see that, and so definitely rooting on Paul, Rob, and just wishing. It's interesting because we have a common friend called Paul, and in any event, very, very pleased to introduce Rob Goehring for his presentation today.
Thank you very much, Hamed. That was a wonderful surprise. Thanks, guys. Thanks very much, everyone. Again, really appreciate it. Thanks again, Hamed. That was great. As Rob Goehring kind of mentioned, what I'm going to be talking about today is a little bit more higher level on AI, some general trends and things. Just by way of background, I have been doing work in the technology industry for about 25 years now, building and operating companies across a wide variety of sectors. As Hamed mentioned, spent a lot of time at TO in fintech. I've worked across marketing tech in the last 5+ years, very, very deep in AI. I sit in the board of a couple of companies and an advisor to a number. But I also do a lot of work out here in British Columbia with the BC Tech Association. I have been basically their AI person for the last 4 years. I founded and stood up the AI Chief Executive Council, where I've had the pleasure of overseeing 20 to 25 different AI companies. I also helped the BC Tech Association design, build, and launch an AI accelerator called Hyperscale AI that we had funded by the Scale AI Supercluster out of Montreal, which was fantastic. Again, we sort of put about 20, 25 companies through that. So I think part of the point here today was really to kind of walk through a series of kind of trends happening in AI, really sort of set the stage at a baseline and talk through things. Very quickly, I'm going to walk through some different categories of AI at a very high level, a bit of the history, and then talk a bit about some AI investment opportunities and themes and some ways to evaluate investment criteria along the way. These are, obviously everything is very different depending on the companies you look at. So this is meant to be, sort of a very high level and fast overview. As Rob mentioned, happy to take questions now or at the end. And what we'll do as well, I think we'll be distributing the slides because there's definitely lots of detail here that I'll go through pretty quickly. So having said that, I think we are again at a very pivotal moment here in artificial intelligence. Obviously, we're all hearing about it in the last several months, but this has been going on for quite some time. It's very empowering to see folks like Bill Gates come out and talk so boldly about AI. The reason I mentioned this quote from Bill about how the development of AI is as fundamental as the creation of the microprocessor, the computer, and the internet and mobile phone is the fact that in March, when Bill penned this note, he said there's only been really two things that have blown him away in his world. One, it was seeing the graphical user interface in the 80s, and then seeing how AI is being built in the last 6-9 months. So we're really at a watershed moment here. Very quickly as well, just to kind of set the stage, there are so many ways to talk about AI, and as we all look at different companies and investment opportunities, there's very, very different approaches here. I think broadly, AI is generally organized into sort of 3 broad types. So the types of AI that mimic human intelligence, the types of AI that learn from and adapt to data without being programmed, and then other types of AIs that can simulate human reasoning to solve very complex problems. Again, many, many ways to break this down, but this is sort of one model that talks about 6 broad areas. You probably have heard of many of these. The first one, machine learning and deep learning, the ability for computing systems to learn from data and make their own decisions. Natural language processing and speech recognition. Of course, all of us, having used and looked at ChatGPT in the last few months, are familiar with how natural language AI can kind of look and feel. Computer vision and image processing, this is the ability for a computing system, an AI system, to make sense of images and video and detect objects in those images and then make decisions and do things based on that. Robotics and autonomous systems, of course, we're all seeing the emergence of more and more robotics, whether it's in manufacturing or further out. And we've, of course, seen lots of examples of this in the last few years. Knowledge representation and reasoning, again, this is sort of a branch of AI that helps make logic decisions, mimicking how humans think and kind of decision trees. And then finally, one that you won't necessarily see in an investment platform, but it's very, very important in this day and age. It's all about ethics, policy, and societal impact. Of course, we've seen some issues pop up with some AI things around ethical use of data training models and things like that. So I mention this one only because it's something we should all be aware of to make sure we're doing the right things well. Now, of course, in the last few months, we have all been exposed to generative AI. And it has, all of us in the AI space are very grateful, I think, for that, because it's really, ChatGPT and others have really demonstrated the true power of AI to the world and made it understandable and recognizable, and taking it out of sort of the back room where people were aware of it, but not necessarily convinced of all the different capabilities. And we've now seen some incredible innovations and demonstrations that make it easier for us investors and our clients and partners to understand how AI can be applied. This generative AI space, of course, has been all over the news. This is a branch of AI where it's about the creation of new and novel content by leveraging sort of deep learning and generative models. This can be across text, images, music, speech, video, all sorts of things. These models tend to be trained on massive sets of data from a vast array of sources. Again, we've probably heard about a number of these: OpenAI, Bard, Stable Diffusion, Anthropic, and others. When you look at these models, GPT-2, we started working with that in September 2019 when it came out. It was trained on 1.5 billion pieces of data. GPT-3 was sort of 175 billion. GPT-4, they're sort of saying it's about 1.7 trillion pieces of data. So these data models are getting very, very large and very powerful. And that's where this generative space has really come from. So touching on that, because again, we've probably all been exposed to many of these things. As we start to think about, some more important themes around how we are as investors can think about this technology, a lot of times we see these technologies almost feel like they come out of nowhere. And often these things are talked about, a 10-year overnight success. Well, not to go into the details of all this in this particular slide, but AI has been a branch of science and computing science going back to the 50s and the work of Alan Turing and more. Lots of different waves of AI through the 60s and 70s and beyond, where different techniques were tried, some worked, some failed, but lots of fits and starts. It wasn't really until sort of the early 2010s that a few things came together to really catapult AI to where it is today. Again, we're very lucky to be in Canada here, to have two of the three sort of pioneers, what they often call the godfathers of AI, Dr. Geoffrey Hinton and Dr. Yoshua Bengio, be Canadian. Yann LeCun, an American. These three gentlemen and their teams all made a variety of sets of innovations that really helped catapult AI forward. Dr. Hinton from the U of T, of course, his team had huge advancements in the ImageNet data sets and really helped computer vision, what's called back propagation and neural networks kind of get to where they are today. But one of the fundamental things that, of course, really changed with AI was sort of this perfect storm of these algorithms getting better, being able to achieve things they couldn't achieve before, the creation of the open internet with massive amounts of data now being available, and then different approaches in computing. So, of course, we've all seen the rapid rise in NVIDIA's market cap in the last little while. NVIDIA's GPU hardware powers so many of these huge large language models. For instance, the rumor is that there are somewhere between 30 and 40,000 NVIDIA GPU cards powering ChatGPT. It really was, again, this advent of this GPU or graphical processor unit that was being used for games and video rendering and things that, when applied to AI, really took the magic of these algorithms, these massive data sets, and this new kind of approach to computing, and really brought it to where it is today. Again, this is why really, we believe that AI is this massive next wave in computing. Again, not to go into all the details, but really for many of us, the dawn of the web was in 1993 when the Mosaic browser kind of dropped. I hate to date myself, but I remember I was in undergrad. I remember when that happened and seeing it in the computer lab and seeing how this was a whole new different approach. Social media had been kind of built, but really with the emergence of Facebook in 2004, we saw the rise in social media, the connection. That was another wave of computing. 2006 was when Amazon released their first simple storage service with their S3, which became the foundation of the AWS platform, this cloud computing wave. And then on the heels of that, the mobile computing wave, with really, again, lots of phones had been before that, but really the emergence of the iPhone brought in the mobile computing wave. And really the AI is this fifth wave in computing. So again, from an investor perspective, we have to look at all of these things because there's different ways to invest in them. And these are, again, generalities. But when I look at this, and when I talk to a lot of people in my network about it, there's kind of, we look at the really great opportunities specific to more likely public market and investment opportunities. There are lots of AI companies out there with different business models. But again, across this top here, when we kind of think about it, we put them into three broad buckets. One is applied AI, which of course is the name of this conference. In Canada, we tend to be very strong, applied AI companies. Applied AI is really all about applications that are built that use core AI technologies on real world problems, where this AI dramatically improves productivity, output, yield, processes, things like that. So it's all about taking this amazing technology and applying it to a business problem to create output and improvements. Sort of adjacent to that are enterprise AI applications. Now, these are the applications where AI is enhancing an enterprise's core systems with artificial intelligence. That often takes into account, maybe it's external data models, but it's also really using internal, private, or corporate data in a unique way that solves problems for an enterprise, and again, can improve their internal yields. So these tend to be very specific applications that help an enterprise do more, be more productive, find answers to problems they couldn't find in the past, but really focused around improvements for an enterprise. And then vertical AI. Vertical AI is a whole segment where it's applying AI to a particular industry vertical or a vertical solution. And by doing that, that focus on a vertical dramatically improves success and adoption of a technology or a solution, and really gets huge outcomes in a vertical. That vertical might be sales enablement, might be marketing, might be manufacturing, might be energy. There's so many of them, but by having a focus on a core vertical, you get tremendous benefits out of these AI platforms. From an investment thesis, really see those sectors as being the ones that are closest to actually producing and are producing real business outcomes, and we really like those. The other examples on the bottom row here, they're not bad at all. They're by no means, and I wouldn't say avoid them. They tend to fall into different categories. There's tons of great AI companies that are doing deep core research and development. These are sometimes science experiments. They do tend to be longer time horizons before they become, commercialized products. It might be many years, 5 to 10 years, and they often can be the realm of more traditional private venture capital or private equity investors. They might begin investing in core algorithms, building things out again that won't see the market for many, many years. We are, of course, also seeing tons of these ChatGPT bolt-ons, being able to take ChatGPT or these other large language models or other generative AI technologies and being some kind of a bolt-on that just leverages those platforms entirely. There are some fantastic companies, there are fantastic services using these technologies. But having said that, what we're already seeing in the few short months since, say, ChatGPT has really been in market, we're already seeing these services being replicated or absorbed or copied by OpenAI, the builders of ChatGPT, Google, Microsoft, others that really kind of absorb or render startups obsolete, in a couple of weeks because they're simply adding the functionality to their core platform. There's intense competition in these parts of markets, again, because there tends to be low barrier to entry. We're seeing, people that aren't even deep software developers building interesting services on ChatGPT in a weekend. Those are types of things that don't have a huge competitive moat. Great services, but they maybe aren't sustainable businesses to invest in. If you're interested, there's a great website called there'sanaIforthat.com that tracks the emergence of all of these different platforms. When I first looked at There's an AI for That back in January, there was 800, 900 companies. There's probably over 7,000 or 8,000 now, and it's growing like mad. So it makes it a very competitive space. And then finally, we do also often see sort of these bandwagon AI strategies where there are companies that have traditionally had nothing to do with AI that sort of tack on AI to what they're doing. They often have little to no true AI capabilities or resources in the company. And that can be a risk from an investor standpoint. These are people that are trying to take advantage of a trend that, again, may not have a long-term sustainable competitive advantage in that market from an AI perspective. So what does this all mean? Well, some key considerations. AI, as much as it has been around since the 50s, really we're still in early innings in this. There's plenty of upside, plenty of new opportunities in the space. From an investor perspective, I'd always say, the path to revenue for a company must be very clear. There are some companies that have significant growing revenue, but many still don't, and I think that's very much okay. There's still lots of early entrants into this market. There's tremendous value derived by the quality of the AI team on board at a company. In the early days, in the 2012 to 2015 AI adoption wave, companies were being bought and sold simply by the number of PhDs they had on their team. That's not really happening anymore, but really the quality of the team can still drive tremendous value. So something to look for. And again, there are growing numbers of opportunities for strong consolidation acquisition in the space. So we see the space growing and growing and growing like crazy, but still there's going to be a ton of M&A activity, which again is huge upside for investors. Really brief on Wisr, because I'm just doing an example on this, just very quickly, because it's not a commercial for Wisr, but what we do is we take mass amounts of global data. We look at dark web, news, social media, all sorts of other data, and we give enterprises the predictive capability to get ahead of cyber attacks before they happen. We use generative and other AI systems to predict risk scores for enterprises and their vendor networks. This is in massive demand by management boards and other teams because risk models from a couple years ago don't work anymore. We provide the signals to help enterprises understand which of the vendors they have to worry about, which ones they have to do things about, how to patch things well in advance. So we give this future-looking view. And we have a very efficient go-to-market through reseller channels, and we're in very advanced discussions with some huge companies to bring our product to market to their existing channel marketplace. The reason I bring this up is to give a good example. From an investor perspective, one of the questions you'll often have to look at is how do I evaluate how much proprietary IP exists in applied AI companies? And one of the ways to look at this is to actually look at a large, very successful platform like OpenAI's ChatGPT. The way ChatGPT works is they have a whole bunch of very valuable data. They've got data they've licensed. They've got data they've created through human training people that feed back data into the platform. And they, in their case, mostly have scraped public data. So they've built a very valuable data set across a variety of dimensions. They've also got proprietary AI systems. They've got AI algorithms, models. They've built their architecture, training methods, and composition of data sets. And that's how we've done it at Wisr, and very similar to many, many other companies. We have licensed data. We've built our own data sets. We've got data fed by human trainers. We've got our own proprietary data. This may be, again, dark web, social news, all sorts of things, but also the way we combine this data, the way we build our own proprietary algorithms, the way we've architected our system, and the way we've trained our data all come together to make a proprietary model. So we see a lot of these type of models working in the space where there's a combination of public, private, and generated data, along with core intellectual property around custom algorithms that are all proprietary. So I'll leave this with you because this is a good way to evaluate how some companies are approaching it. And then really, when you get down to it, it is very difficult because this is a big space. There's lots of technology here. So very quickly to run through some questions you can ask. And again, you'll get a copy of this deck so you can keep this and we can help you with more. When you're evaluating an AI company, some simple questions to ask are, what are your specific AI technologies that are in use, whether it's machine learning, deep learning, neural networks, et cetera, et cetera. It's very important that a company has crisp answers to that and are very clear on it. You'd want a company to explain how AI is integrated into their product or service, and a great answer, again, will typically be understandable to anybody, but also be very detailed, and they can go very deep on the technical aspects of it. Asking about what unique and proprietary algorithms exist or technologies they've developed is very important. Again, doesn't mean a company has to develop everything from scratch. You can stand on the shoulders of lots of great technology that exists out there, but there has to be a mix of things that create something proprietary. If there's nothing proprietary, that's a true red flag. The data is very important, where a company gets their data from, how it's trained, how often it's trained is very important. Many, many AI companies, of course, are only as good as the data they have and how they build it and how they train it and leverage it. How the AI models perform is very, very important. How that's getting measured is critical. So for products that are in market, again, asking for key performance data on how the AI models are actually performing. For companies that are approaching market, AI companies typically rely on what's called back testing, where you take your AI models and you blindly test them against things that have happened in the past, and you can see how they perform. That's called back testing. That's a very important method. And then the competitive advantage the AI platform provides. This is, of course, very, very important. You've got to be able to speak to how a company's systems and services are different and provide something that's sustainable and has a real true advantage in the market. Where to invest very quickly. There are so many segments that our recommendation here is really follow the leaders in the market. This screen here is from CB Insights, and there'll be links after the presentation that show you a bunch of places you can get this data. These are all private companies, but following where a lot of the venture capitalists are investing to kind of see investment trends can be a very, very important way to evaluate it. But broadly, there's tons of early adoption across. Obviously, we're seeing it in marketing, copywriting, DevOps, IT infrastructure, cybersecurity, defense and risk management, health tech, bioinformatics, screening for kinds of drugs, enterprise applications. There are just so many, but the ones that are a little slower to adopt on the longer time horizons are really around areas where there may be high risk or litigious conditions or litigious industries. you don't see AI being built into the cockpits of commercial airlines just yet. They may be being tested in defense applications in F-18s and things. Utilities and energy, government and unionized environments, often where there's a risk of job loss, that can be a real blocker in these situations. So to kind of finish everything off, some key takeaways. You can use all your analogies here. From an AI standpoint, the train has left the station, the genie's out of the bottle, the cat's out of the bag, however you want to look at it. I don't think there's any putting this back in. AI is transforming everything. This Cambrian explosion in AI is just beginning, and AI is really a true fundamental shift for almost every industry in the world. And really, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, someone that works in the ecosystem a lot, this is a great time to invest in AI, and we'll see huge upside in returns. So I'll finish there. I'm not sure if we are going to do questions now or later, but I certainly can stay on. I'll stay on at the end for anything I can help with Q&A. But again, thanks everyone for your time. That was very probably a lot of detail very quickly, but I appreciate it.
Very good, Rob. Thank you. I know you're just scratching the surface, and I encourage you to be around for the questions. And as you said, all of the information will be available to participants in the conference. And I know that Rob also has more extensive slide work that is available and is equally as impressive. So Rob, our thanks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, everyone.
Very good. Now, turning to our next speaker, I'm very pleased to introduce Sasha Gruszczyk, the CEO and director of NowVertical. Sasha is an experienced technology leader, having run operations with over 200 million revenues and over 1,500 employees. But he also brings a rich history with startups and with M&A experience. With respect to Now, we are very bullish towards the company's foundational fusion technology and data analytics. We believe these represent a foundational layer to leverage IP-based commercial AI applications. Now, not wanting to steal your thunder, Sasha, in any way, but I encourage everyone to watch the presentation. And there's one slide, a graphic depicting Now's technology partnerships. It's really impressive to see what Sasha and his team have done to date. And it also gives you a tremendous roadmap looking ahead. So with that, I'm very pleased to hand it over to you, Sasha. Sasha, thank you.
So thanks everybody for the time. What a great conference. Applied AI, couldn't agree more with the subject matter and get more excited about it. So, hi, my name's Sasha. I'm the CEO of NowVertical. I've been the CEO for coming on 60 days. But I've been with the company for about 18 months, which is, 3/4 of its history as an organization. So, who we are and what we do really boils down to this, which is we're really looking to create smarter, faster, and better connected companies and governments with artificial intelligence. Smarter in that we want machines to do things that people can't. Faster, that we want to move the speed of data. And better connected is that we want to bring our customers closer to their clients, end customers, and stakeholders. So we're really looking at the deployment of artificial intelligence in these arenas. Huge numbers. I think that the latest data on the impact of AI from a kind of a economic growth perspective are enormous. But when I get really excited is when I take a look at the chart on the right-hand side, which is looking at organizations in some of the leading countries in the world that are either deploying or exploring AI, and you see massive levels of penetration in and around this space, which tells us that the market opportunity is quite large. When you dig a little bit deeper into what does it mean to do artificial intelligence with governments or companies or large enterprises, is that there's 4 big barriers to any type of success there. The first is data. Most organizations and governments have no idea where their data is, what it represents, whether it's secure at all. The second is around talent. We're in a huge position of talent scarcity right now, especially as it relates to data science and any type of applied AI. The third is around risk. You cannot overstate the risk in the way in which that AI is deployed in enterprise and in governments, specifically from the viability of the data, the bias in the model, the interpretability of the model, or even the risk associated with the data that gets imported into those models. And the final piece is around returns, right? So we ultimately don't want to be in the science experiment business. We want to be focused on outcomes for our customers that are going to generate material returns in the work that we do. So when we talk about smarter, faster, and better connected companies and governments, we're really targeting the way in which that they do the things that they do. So how do we actually deliver AI in industry and in government? Well, it really comes down to the confluence of kind of three critical inputs in terms of the work product that you ultimately need to generate. The first is around the kind of data governance, engineering, and infrastructure, a highly underestimated scope of requirements to build artificial intelligence models on top of existing operations. One important distinction that I always like to make is that unlike the general training data sets that a lot of these kind of new AI companies are built upon, most organizations and governments will not be using generalized data sets in order to deploy AI in their workforce or in their workplace, because it's non-specific, it's generic, and it's not representative of the way in which that they work. So you have to do the work around the governance and engineering and infrastructure piece to be successful. Part of the reason why we talk about our partnerships with Amazon, Microsoft, Snowflake, Google, and Qlik is that the penetration of these companies in our global kind of customer base is quite high, and they have some of the critical tools and technologies that enable for AI to be built, but they're not exclusively within those arenas and environments. The second piece is you really need to bring data science and analytics to the table to get you some sort of benchmark as to what you're trying to use AI to improve upon. And the final piece is around ML and AI. And I really liked the categorization that Rob offered around computer vision, natural language processing, knowledge graphs and networks, as well as robotics and automation. This really speaks to the vertical intelligence focus that we have as an organization, because AI doesn't mean the same thing to every company, just like a bank doesn't work the same way as an auto manufacturer as a retailer does. So the famous slide that Rob Goff talked about is about our vertical intelligence operating system, which is the way in which that we orchestrate all of our customers' environments and data into a machine learning environment that enables us to build these solutions. This is early stages for us in how we integrate our acquired technologies, but it's a really powerful way in which to bring artificial intelligence solutions into an operating environment, whether it's a customer that's a Fortune 1000 or a large government. This is how we make money. We have technology services and consulting. We sell through our own proprietary technology, and then we work to sell through third-party technologies. When you look at the modern AI environment for enterprise and government, you really have to be modular. You can't look at a one-size-fits-all. No organization, no large IT team or infrastructure is going to say, we're going to go all in on one technology. Never happens. So you have to be flexible and modular. And that's the way in which that we're building our organization. So rather than talking generalities, let's talk about some specific use cases. So I'm going to do this, maybe the second or third hardest thing here is I'm going to try to share a live demo. We just launched a partnership with Azure OpenAI, which is the enterprise grade OpenAI models and systems for companies that are looking to deploy large language model capabilities into an enterprise setting or a government setting without moving their data. So this is totally secure. There's no data leakage. There's no risk. And we're doing work with some of our customers. And this is one of our early customers. It's a customer that we do a lot of customer service work with and customer service reporting with. So Blinds to Go, large custom blinds manufacturer out of the UK. And we do a lot of data science and data visualization work with them. So what we've done here is we've deployed OpenAI's large language model across their inbound customer service center. So this is their customer service email inbox. that gets serviced across the variety of different customers. So we just started this work in July because we just announced the partnership in July. And so this is just a very basic visualization of the inbound customer service requests that you get. But what's really cool when you start to dig down here is that the way in which that we built this is, yes, we had to do some data engineering to get all the data in the right form and format for the large language model to ingest. But everything that you see here in the categories was entirely generatively built. So none of this stuff was pre-programmed, and none of this analysis was done by humans. This was done entirely by the large language model. So the way in which that the LLM works is that it takes all the data and it starts to build you these custom profiles and breakdowns of all the email inbound topics and starts to do some generative analysis. So what do we mean specifically by that? So these categories that it's generating here, right? So these are all generated by the large language model. No human has touched this. So if I click on complaints, it's categorized these 4 emails as complaints. And what's really cool, and maybe slightly nerdy for us that work in the space, is that sentiment is always a really difficult challenge to interpret with machines because it relies on natural language process. So the simplified version of this is machines are really bad at knowing the difference between something is bad and something is badass. So oftentimes they struggle interpreting which is which. But when we look at this deployment and it starts to do some sentiment analysis across an email, and this is a unique email and that I've obviously not pre-programmed, but you can start to, what the language model is doing is reading the email and it's assigning some sentiment analysis to it, right? So you're seeing things like issues still with my order, overlaps has hinges attached to both sides, see the picture. I think you need to refund the full amount and call it a day. Excuse me. So obviously a negative sentiment. But if we take a look at something like this, which has a positive sentiment, you can start to see that there's a lot more positive a sentiment associated with it. So we can also use machine learning to determine customer churn. So in this instance, we worked with the Commercial Bank of China to determine what the churn is going to look like using gaps in the data sets that was available. So in this instance, we used sophisticated machine learning models to determine and identify churn that improved the churn prediction by over 15%, which is huge in commercial banking, and was able to target specific retention activities, excuse me, to support the retention of those customers. So again, really focusing in on outcomes for our customers with the deployment of AI. Another example is work that we've done with The Economist. So again, using machine learning and data orchestration to get improvements in subscriber growth, subscription revenues, and overall operating profits. And this is really just about using machine learning and artificial intelligence to optimize for these functions. So by bringing all their data together and starting to connect them through our different technologies and third-party technologies, we're able to start to generate these positive returns using ML. Huge problem in telecommunications actually has to do with pay-as-you-go churn or pay-as-you-go customers. Because you don't have customer data or a history of customers with pay-as-you-go, it's really difficult to determine how those customers are going to churn. So what we were able to do is using some advanced algorithms, we were able to start to predict when customers are likely to churn in the absence of knowing who they are, where they live, what they do. It's just based on stuff like location, their consumption data, and where they purchased it. So by reducing churn by 60%, we improved huge yields for our telecommunications customer in Liberty, Latin America. One of our final case studies here is just around optimizing marketing spend. So Vitamin Shop had some existing models that were human built, and this was just to determine where they should be investing across particular direct mail activity. In this instance, we used machine learning algorithms to see if we could do some improvements and generated $2.8 million of additional revenue. In summary, we're really focused on trying to help and create smarter, faster, and better connected companies and governments using AI. And we're really focused on doing this on an industrial scale and service large organizations and governments around the world. We've got 250 customers currently across 5 continents, and that's about it. So I'm going to stop there, and hopefully we'll stop coughing for the Q&A a little bit later today.
Sasha, our thanks. And with that, I'm really happy to hand it over to my teammate, Christine. Christine, over to you.
Thank you, Rob. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chris Young. I run the originations group here at Echelon, along with my partner, Steve Serbavin. We are pretty excited to be introducing Railtown AI to you. We have Corey Brandolini here today, the CEO, and Marwan Haddad, the CTO. We have known Corey for many a year, but we've really gotten involved over the last year with Railtown. We think it's a very exciting new story. It's publicly traded under RAIL. The most simple way to describe it is a debugging platform using AI for software development. But I will allow Corey and Marwan to get into the nitty gritty of that. But again, very exciting new story using generative AI that I think will do very well. So Corey, over to you.
Thanks, Christine. Can you hear me? Am I on?
Yep.
Wonderful. Thanks, Christine. That's a nice introduction. Thanks, everyone, for joining in today to hear about all of these wonderful AI companies. Thanks again to Echelon for organizing this nice virtual event. Great. So quick introduction. My name is Corey Brandolini. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Railtown AI. With me today is Marwan Haddad, CTO and co-founder of Railtown AI as well. I'm going to start with a little bit of a verbal glossary right in the beginning. Rob did such a great job giving some great descriptions about the industry and the space at large. But for this presentation, a little verbal glossary. When we refer to our machine, we're talking about our AI. When we refer to co-pilots, it's description of an AI assistant that works with our user and helps our user do a significant amount of the heavy lifting, dealing with a lot of the mundane tasks that our customer, which is a software developer, has to go through to allow that developer to accelerate his productivity. And thirdly, when you hear the term generative AI, and it's used quite generally across this industry, from our perspective, generative AI is giving a humanistic output to what you're doing. So it gives your co-pilot a humanistic response to your workflow. So just a little glossary there. I'm going to actually start with investment highlights right in the very beginning here. So to give you a quick coverage on our company and who we are. We have a seasoned team here of co-founders and senior developers that have got multiple decades in building complex enterprise software and AI solutions. We also have a seasoned capital markets team between myself and our CFO that have spent decades in the capital markets industry. Also, 100% of our machine and our AI has been developed and built from the ground up here in Vancouver, BC. It's 100% owned intellectual property. We have multiple provisional patents along what we've built. And we've also been, one of the things I think was important to note that in Rob's opening presentation is, time spent on your machine and your modeling. And so we started this process about 4 years ago when we were writing our white paper, and then we started building out our machine and training it since then. So we've had over 3.5 years of training our machine to get to the point of what I think Rob talked about is an optimization level that you can actually be confident that it's giving the results back to your customers. So we've got years of building and training our machine. Obviously, we're in the software space, so this is a very large and expanding vertical market. We know there's nothing bigger out there than software. Software runs the world. Everybody needs software. It's obviously one of the most important things that gets us through our day-to-day lives. To date, we've got a very large beta testing community that's been very crucial as we built out our machine to train it. And we also have no barrier to entry. One of the things we did in early days is we made sure that our application and our AI was fully integrated with all of the best-in-class tools that developers use today to build and maintain and launch software applications. We're also a first mover in this area. We started to look at applying AI to software engineering many years ago. And it was a passion play for my team and I to get to this point where we could build something out that would help remove a lot of the mundane tasks and also the problems that come along with building and maintaining software, and applying an artificial intelligence agent to that workflow was something that was a very much part of our DNA, what we wanted to achieve. So we've been working at this for some time to get here. So when we looked at this space, we even actually had early conversations with Microsoft in the very, very beginning about, what their thought processes and how they were going to see AI coming out to their marketplace. And they were quite interested in what we were doing, so much so that we quickly accelerated our relationship with them to as a full Microsoft partner. As you see there in the slide, we're also now a certified Microsoft partner. We've been with them since the onset in the very, very beginning. It's been very helpful as we've rolled out and developed and built our application. We've also reached just recently what's called Microsoft co-sell status, which puts Railtown in a position where other Microsoft sales reps and other Microsoft partners can now sell our application on behalf of Railtown, which is obviously very exciting for us. Gives us a great go-to-market to enterprise customers without cost on our side. And in the past year, we've also established a strong enterprise reselling partner out of Microsoft. And we're working on an MSP strategy, a managed solutions provider solution, where Railtown will be bundled in as an Azure end-to-end AI dev solution, along with one of their flagship products, as you may have heard of, called GitHub Copilot and Application Insights and Azure DevOps. So we're really excited to see how that rolls out over the next few quarters. We're also a battle-tested solution. One of the things, again, Rob brought up in the very beginning is when you're looking at AI is, what stage is it? How has it gotten through its training? Where is it today? How is it functioning? And is it actually commercial ready? So we've obviously been at it for like I said, almost 4 years on building. We've actually even dog-fooded our own application with our AI, basically having our AI help us build our actual applications, so that we went to market with it. It spent a lot of time battle tested. We're also excited to say 2 of our first 3 applications, or co-pilots, if you will, we've commercially launched on the Microsoft Marketplace. Very specifically, as part of our rollout and partnership with Microsoft, we wanted to put our first 2 products up there for their teams to look at. And so we're excited to say we've actually pushed our first 2 products to the Microsoft Marketplace. We are a SaaS solution, so obviously there's a very high SaaS value, very high SaaS solution margins as well. So easy to go to market and with very little barrier on those. We're also a CEC listed company under the symbol RAIL, and we have just recently filed for our OTC listing. So what is Railtown? So in the very beginning, I gave you a quick little snapshot in the top. We're a generative AI co-pilot assistant to software developers for the very specific goal to help software developers improve productivity, drive down inefficiency, and improve product quality, lower costs, and accelerate engineering and team velocity. As you'll see in the slides coming up, a significant amount of time of devs' time is spent problem solving. On average, you'll see developers write maybe 10 to 20 lines of code per day, which might take up 20% of their time, and the rest of the day is spent debugging problem solving and managing the overall application. Our goal at Railtown was to build a system that can pick up all of that bulk work in order for the developer to be more productive and putting his time into writing more code and deploying more of their builds. So where is the problem that Railtown's tackling? It's quite a big one. To date, and we've lived this, we've experienced ourselves over the many years we've been building software, is that about 40% of a dev's time is fixing problems. And so if you were to take that into real hard dollars, if your company is spending $1 million a quarter on software development, about 400K of that is going into dealing with the issues that arise as you're building and maintaining and running an application. And this could be everything from fixing a bug, finding a bug, searching out what the bug's doing, how it's affecting your overall application. Is it possibly causing a threat to your personal information? Is it opening up exposure to credit cards? Anything above is the application going to crash? For example, we're all using Zoom right now, and there'll be a whole team at Zoom that's working around the clock to make sure that this application is running so it doesn't crash in the middle of our streams. This is has been done by manpower to date, and it's still being done by manpower, is dealing with these issues that arrive any minute of the day. I'm sure we all experienced the Rogers communications crash a few years ago, a simple bug bringing that the Rogers network down to the ground, which not only costs a significant amount of dev time, but obviously the monetary damages to the brand and costs that have to go out for that. On the right, there was a report written not too long ago about that Stripe actually wrote, as you know, big payment capture company. They had reached out to many of their other fellow companies in the Valley, and it recognized the same issue that we all do, is that you're looking at about 42% in productivity loss dealing with software that's not poorly written, but maybe just the logic behind it or something that's happened that's causing the application not to run. And so again, this is a real life experience that we've had our entire life in software development, and our goal was to build something in order to tackle this and drive that cost down. So when we look at a customer in the face, we say, if you're spending 40% of your dollars debugging, add Railtown to your workflow, to your tool sets that you're using, and watch that number drop dramatically. And we will also track that velocity through our dashboards, where you can see how your developers are now producing more builds and deploying more releases at a faster level. And with our system being able to track and pick up all of the issues, point directly to where they lie, allows the developer to do a discovery process in a much quicker fashion. So again, this big number, again, some people will say it's even higher than 40%. We've seen it around this number ourselves through experience. We've built 3 main products to tackle this right out of the get-go. And our first 2 we've been commercialized. One is which is called the Root Cause Analysis Copilot, which is an early error detection system, which we find that if our AI can capture and recognize an issue before it becomes an issue to the end user, you're saving about 15x of discovery and debugging time to attack it right away, which was where the core application was built all around, and I'll explain that in a minute. The other product that we've released is what we call the Release Notes Copilot, and this is where our AI is also using natural language processing to translate what our root cause analysis copilot is finding and discovering, and translate that into descriptible English, so that when something arises, our copilot will immediately send an English description to the developing team as to what it's found, where it's found it, what it thinks it is, and how, and which way you can address that as quickly as possible. And thirdly, at the top, which is one of our big granddaddy products that we're going to be launching in the next month into beta, which is called our Scrum Master Chat Copilot. And this is a knowledge-based solution that our machine has been learning on in order to give our developers a humanistic and knowledge-based response on a communicative level directly to the application. We're really excited about the launch of this product in the next quarter. So how do we do it? Couple of things I think that again, Rob and the previous gentleman talked about is about data and how you get data and how important data is. Without data, AI doesn't exist, as we all know. And so I wanted to just break down very quickly, the differences between things like large language models that are trained on the internet, if you will, and what we call ours is a targeted language model. Our machines are trained on very specific data sets, and these are each individual company's own build data. So in these boxes up on the left, and these are, again, privacy and security about data is extremely important. And so we built our application from the ground up in the very beginning to deal with this specifically. So our AI, so if each one of these boxes would be, you could consider these as somebody's software application. And so attaching Railtown to your tool set to build your application, our AI is immediately learning individualistically about each company's own application. So it becomes almost very personal to each company, as opposed to how this AI might react to this company's application or this company's application, because everybody's data is different. So we very specifically taught our machine how to train on everybody's individual private data that is not available to the greater world, like companies like ChatGPT and Bard and others that again are trading on what's free and available on the internet, as opposed to proprietary intellectual property data that's protected for all the reasons we know. And so that way, when customers use Railtown, its machine acts as almost an engineer within that company's team and behaves and has a very personalized touch to each company. So it's different for every single application.
Another
yeah, sorry, go ahead, Bart. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Bart. Yeah.
Make about this before Corey moves on to the next slide. If you can.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Corey.
Yeah.
Is Bard and ChatGPT are trained on public internet data, but it's static to year 2021.
Yes.
And the advantage of a platform like Railtown, where we're connected with developers' data between logs, tickets, and the deployments, we have a great platform behind the system that is an orchestration platform that takes care of data security and privacy for each company, but it also keeps the model up to date, updated as the data comes in. We're updating our model and making this data available to our customers so they can utilize that insights and info right away. And it takes a lot of effort and a big platform and architecture to make sure this is happening real time, and orchestration is a big part of having a successful data platform.
Yeah, that's really well said, Marwan. Sorry, I should probably cover that as well. One of the things too that is about when you're building a machine to do something, you also have to create a large ingestion engine, which is something that the company is built from the ground up. Do you want to just touch on that quickly, Marwan, as well?
Yeah, so this is like year 4 for us, almost year 5. So the foundation part for us was building a large-scale data ingestion that can scale with time.
Yes.
Is able to process, ingest customer project data in real time and be able to securely save and process that data, which helps us build the right AI co-pilot and models on top of that.
Yeah, well said. Thank you. So product Copilot number 1 that was released a couple months back as we pushed it up to Microsoft's cloud. This was the very beginning of Railtown, and it's our training. And again, getting back to some of the highlights that Rob talked about is, the different forms of machine learning and AI that you use to apply to very specific applications. And we're obviously a vertical application that's very specific to software development. So in the very early days, we started out by just training our machine through reinforcement learning, supervised learning, semi-supervised learning, in order to even understand what a bug is. What is a bug, and can you call out a bug? Can it capture a bug and say, this is an issue that we've seen in the system, and what does that mean? And from that, then you train it to understand where the bug is affecting in the overall application, which pages it could possibly affecting, where in the application is this going to be an issue. Should then train the machine to understand what language it's speaking. Is it speaking Java? Is it speaking C#? Is it speaking JavaScript? What languages is it speaking? Thirdly, then train the machine to understand exactly where that originated from, which server it's sitting on, what developer produced that ticket to that build. And so once our machine got to the point that it understood holistically in as Marwan said, in real time, what this issue is, how it originated, where it lies, what it's affecting. It immediately gave the team a deep insight into the root cause of where this issue is coming from. And if you're not an engineer, one thing to note, there's a lot of information in an issue, in a bug, in an error that starts to develop knowledge around. And so, and I'll pass on to Marwan here in a second, but the process of actually investigating to find out where an issue lies within an application is immensely time consuming. And in our past experiences with other company, we've had actually a red light in the bullpen that would go off as soon as a bug would arise, and all the developers would have to stand up and stop working. And then there would be this discovery phase that the team lead or the CTO or the VP of Eng would start to go down the rabbit hole to quickly find out what this is. Is it catastrophic? Is it going to cause a credit card exposure? And so on and so on. And this is one of those tasks that come about that cause that 40% of non-productivity time. Marwan, if you have any thoughts around that you want to add, please.
Yeah, and what Corey is referring to, and you probably know about, is called the triage process.
Yep.
And with that Railtown, we use 4 or 5 different systems, and it takes us a couple of hours to investigate and get to the bottom of a problem. Using Railtown AI, this is down to few minutes of an alert that is pushed to Slack or Teams or whatever system the team is using, with a complete analysis of the problem, which server, what impact it is. So we completely put the power back into the dev team to fix the problem very quickly and react to any issues.
Yeah, well said. And one of the things too is that the root cause copilot will also point directly to the code change that it's recognized that's caused this issue. So it really eliminates a significant amount of the dev time on this investigation and testing and retesting to find out if this is the correct fix. So it was one thing to train the machine to do all of this, which took in a lot of time and a lot of training and a lot of work to get to that point that we felt it was going to capture 100% of every bug that left the developer's local machine before it got pushed to the server pipeline, that we felt confident that we could launch this out to our customer base. So it was one thing that once the machine understood that what a bug was and all of the information behind it, then we needed to translate that information into English. And so we moved along to our next product, which was called the Release Notes Copilot. And this does multiple functions in the overall application. Number one, as soon as our machine captures an issue, an exception in the application, our Release Notes Copilot will immediately translate that into descriptible English. So, and an information note will be pushed out to your team, whether they're sitting on Slack or any other service that they're using to work off of, and it'll describe exactly what it's found. It'll say the Release Note the RCA Copilot has found this bug. It's originating here. It's causing these issues, and it'll give a very clean description immediately to the dev team. So whoever is working on that very specific build of that application can quickly analyze from that description from the Release Note Copilot what's happened, and then it'll direct it back to the application to show you exactly which ticket it is, what server it's lying on, and what language the bug has arisen in. So really, really important from a time saving. But it also does another service, and I'll let Marwan describe it, which is another big mundane task. And it also helps you rewrite and release what's called release notes to your customer base, which is a review of tickets. And Marwan, maybe you just want to give a description about that.
Absolutely. In new world, in agile development, we build the software in a continuous manner. We continue to deploy the code, the application to multiple servers. And communicating that and writing comprehensive release notes, whether it's internal for our internal communication between the team or for our users, is a repetitive task that takes a couple of hours to do per week. Using our advanced AI engine, we automatically decode what is being deployed. We look at the tickets, the logs, the machine code that we deployed, and automatically create release notes and publish them. So we make this idea of or co-lifting the effort that a dev team will have to do to deliver accurate release notes.
Great, thanks, Marwan. And so those were the first two commercial products that we launched up on the Microsoft Marketplace. Thirdly, as we talked about, is our next product, our granddaddy product, if you will, our knowledge-based product, which is our Scrum Master Chat Copilot. And this is a culmination of everything that's gone on before, and starting with our RCA, really our root cause analysis Copilot, which has to learn on the logic on the application, the knowledge behind the application. Why was it built? Who built it? What is the build about? What was the purpose of the build? What teams worked on the build? Everything behind each application and each build and each ticket behind there's knowledge in there, and our machine has been training on that and how to understand what it is in each team and how they build their applications, to the point now with the release of this product, dev teams will be able to communicate directly to the application on a humanistic level. So you can ask the application direct questions like, I'm seeing this work item surface multiple times today. Can you please describe to me where this issue is and what this issue is? And so now the machine or your AI assistant will now communicate directly back to you. You can ask it a multitude of questions.
Sorry, Corey, we're running over a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I'll wrap it up very quickly. We've got this deck. Anybody that wants to follow up, we can follow up this in greater detail. My apologies. I didn't realize we're going so long over. Quickly, then we'll jump into the market size. How big a market is this? This is obviously a gigantic market. Software is the biggest market out there, as we know. It's only growing rapidly day to day. Currently, today, annually, about $11 billion is spent on marketing, on developer tools. Companies need tools to build software applications. It's a giant market. It's only growing day to day. What we're already recognizing is the growth of AI-assisted tools for software development. They're targeting, $300 billion in added cost to software development with AI tools. The beautiful thing about this, AI actually improves productivity. So these also become a zero cost to the company because it's elevating your productivity, which is obviously really, really important to everybody. One of the interesting reports just produced not too long ago was by GitHub CEO, which is a subset of Microsoft's, as you know. They're predicting AI-assisted developer tools are going to grow the global GDP by almost $1.5 trillion by effectively adding the productivity of 15 million developer productivity time by the use of AI tools. So obviously extremely important and valuable. Finally, one of the things we've talked about here is making money on AI. And I think Rob talked about it in the very beginning. I thought this was very topical and really important to call out right now. Just the other day, you saw that Microsoft put out a news release that they're now adding an AI co-pilot to Microsoft 365, having an AI assistant, write your formulas for Excel, help you write your Word documents. Microsoft stock went up 4% on that news alone. Obviously, the market's on. I think Rob said the train is here now. The market's moving, and there's a very perfect monetizable market that you can see directly in front of you and how Microsoft's applying that to their overall suite of Microsoft services. So thank you guys for your time. I'm sorry I went over. As we all know, there's a lot to talk about in everybody's company. Certainly really appreciate your time. We're here for follow-up calls, and certainly we can happily take follow-up meetings as well.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you, Chris. And it's actually over to Peter. Peter, over to you.
Over to Stefan.
Oh, sorry, Stefan. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, guys. Hey, guys. I'm Stefan Kenville. I'm the healthcare analyst here at Echelon. I'm very pleased to be introducing our next speaker, Dr. Thomas Sawyer, who is the CFO of Cognitivity Neurosciences. Cognitivity has developed and is commercializing Cognica, a very impressive technology. It's an AI-based test that very simply and quickly can accurately assess people's cognitive health. So, a very powerful technology. There's a lot of potential applications for it, but we think there's a big opportunity currently in identifying people at the early stages of Alzheimer's disease, given the recent approval of several new Alzheimer's drugs that target those patients. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Thomas to tell you a bit about cognitivity. Take it away, Thomas.
Good. Okay. So again, thanks for the introduction, Stefan, and thanks to the speakers so far for actually some very interesting discussion. So I want to talk to you a little bit about cognitive neurosciences, tell you a bit about what we do, the problem we're trying to solve, and then obviously say, why is AI important in doing this? What does that add to the mix, and how does it help us to address markets? So we'll start with the problem, as is traditional for young companies, and this is really quite a massive one. So this idea about brain health is a huge, growing healthcare issue all over the world. The one thing I'd kind of draw your attention to is really around where people have nowhere to turn. So people can be worried about their brain health. They can have issues going on. They remain undetected. People don't know how to access any sort of help for this. And that's because there's no standardizable, scalable way to detect and measure brain health at any sort of scale. So yeah, this is a problem that needs to be solved. A quick overview about our company. So we actually are a spin out from research at the University of Cambridge here in England, which was really looking at computational neurosciences and visual processing and a whole bunch of other computational vision relevant metrics. We basically noticed that this was a very, very powerful technology and have since built it into a platform which is delivering services to clinicians all over the world at the moment. We've got through our FDA CE marking NHS. The system uses AI, and we're starting to work with increasingly bigger kind of reference customers, really helping to solve this big problem about, how do you work out that people have got brain health issues? How do we see how people are progressing? How do we measure and monitor? Okay. What the sort of currency, or rather the measure that we take, is around cognitive function, or more specifically, the loss of cognitive function. If your brain function goes down, it can be caused by a number of different things. So neurodegeneration, it can be mental health issues and so on. The point is, the very first symptom that is measurable is in cognitive function before anything else. So if you want to detect early, that's what you have to do. I'll just do a super high level cover of the way that we do this, which is very different to traditional ways of asking memory questions. We do, to use a computing analogy, instead of looking at hard drive performance, we look at CPU performance of the brain. So how well does the brain process information? We do this by presenting a short stimulus to the user. So it's a short duration image, flashes at you. You say whether or not you saw an animal, which is a very important part of it. Because the human brain is tuned to be able to do this very well, and it's culturally consistent. It has a whole bunch of different advantages. And that's what allows us to collect the information on the patient or the subject that allows us to go to the next step. So where does AI come in? Well, we use AI to improve the performance of the technology. That's what it's really about for us. So this is, as Rob said, this is an applied AI. We use it to make a much more generalizable, much more consistent, much more reliable measure than traditional methods, which I'll talk about in a second. Now, what's really important, and this has been highlighted in earlier talks, is this idea of the I think the polite way of putting it is junk in, junk out. There's another phrase that's a little more spicy than that. But the point is that the way that you train your AI, the quality of what you put into it really determines its performance, its output, and so on. In our case, this is expensive and time-consuming clinical studies, so these have to be very well controlled. They have to go through effectively the same way that drugs go to the market. So, because we want to be FDA-approved, CE marked, Health Canada, and so on. You then have to build the models. You have to test them on blind data of the same quality, and then you need to be able to produce performance metrics that are recognizable, that stand up. Okay, so that's first one. You train a model. It does what you think it does. The next step is, of course, to demonstrate its effectiveness in the real world. So, does it work from out with a very well-controlled and defined study? And does this model work in a whole bunch of different areas? So again, you have to go out there, collect evidence surrounding this of, does it work for real people in real situations? There's things very important as well in healthcare, which is to understand and manage the impact of errors. Which direction do they lie? Are you going to tell someone they're healthy when they're not? That's the big risk that everyone cares about mostly. We're actually very fortunate. The design of our whole setup does not allow for that. But it's, again, is there a legal risk? Is there a clinical risk about using this? You need to be able to discuss that and do it. And the last point on this slide really is actually about the what we call explainable AI. This idea that what happens if people start using a black box and they start relying upon it is they stop questioning it. So it becomes something that you just run it and you do, and you get a result, and you always action it the same way. This is very dangerous because particularly with small learning sets or any sort of learning sets, bias can be baked into that you just don't see. So this could be, for any other reasons, ethnicity, all sorts of things like that. It is important that you're able to describe what's in there, and indeed it should be auditable. And this is very, very important going forward for both people's confidence in it and for moral reasons as well. Okay. So the next couple of slides, apologies to any proper data scientists in the audience, because this will come over as overly simplistic, but I just want to very quickly say, why does AI help someone like us to have a better performance? So this slide here is really looking at, if you're doing let's say a standard neuropsychological test, it's a score out of 30, okay? And there'll be cutoffs. So we say, okay, well, Tom is done the test. If he comes in under 22, we will consider him to be impaired. Now, a small change in that, I can get a question wrong because I'm distracted or I make a lucky guess, can put me either side of that cutoff line. So this is actually a very sort of problematic way of classifying people to make decisions about what you're going to do with them, okay? So single dimension linear scale, you can fall in or out of it very easily. The beauty of AI is that you're able to use these n-dimensional models, which mean that effectively they kind of shape around the data. So one mistake does not affect the impact, the category into which you're put. Makes them much more consistent, much more reliable, and indeed, what AI is really, really good at is recognizing patterns. We recognize patterns in users' data that match up to our very well-defined large clinical data sets, and that's what we use to drive the decision making. So performance, reliability, and consistency, that's really what AI gives for us. Now, in terms of where we are using this, so let's talk about the real world problems, the real world markets we're in there. This pyramid represents all the different segments within the healthcare industry that we're currently in use. So this goes from being used by specialists, which is where we started, very important that you have buy-in from KOLs, the real experts in the field. Secondary care, this is specialist clinics. We've done that in the NHS in the Middle East and so on. The next level is the natural home for us in the clinical system, which is part of a regular health check. Our test only takes 5 minutes. It does not need clinical supervision, so it can be like a blood pressure test. That's really what we put to clinical systems. They like this because they do have no other way of getting this information at that level. So people go undiagnosed, there's a terrible issues around the pathway, which we'll talk about in a second. Then as we go down the pyramid, we're kind of getting further and further away from the specialist. This is an earlier point of contact with a patient or a user. So outpatient mobile testing in the middle there. We have done a number of deployments of this. This is people being able to be tested in their own homes, but these are at-risk people where you want to say, okay, you are likely to have some sort of issue coming up. We want to check you regularly, so we're straight on it. We can deal with it. You're going to have better outcomes. We're going to have better cost of care as we go forward. The home testing, the next one down is really the telehealth thing. So this is effectively, people who are healthy that are just doing regular checkups. We can deliver through the web. We can give a very objective and reliable performance, brain performance report back to the clinician. So there. And the bottom one is actually one of our biggest clients is a Japanese insurance group who do it for all their subscribers to a health and life insurance policy that are over a certain age, so over 55. They should do it regularly on renewal. Again, they realize that the reliable indication of an issue picked up early saves money and gives better outcomes for patients. So that's really what we're solving. To drill into a couple of examples here, this is one I was actually on site with the NHS in the UK this morning, looking at this one. So, currently what happens around things like dementia, but and Alzheimer's, but actually other brain health issues is that it relies on the primary healthcare person, the top doctor, to make a subjective assessment. They don't have time to do anything else. So either people turn up and are so obviously impaired, this is what we call a barn door diagnosis. There's no need for any more than 2 minutes in front of a clinician, but they can't be helped. It's far too late. They should have been spotted, 10, 15 years before. Or you get the worried well who forgot where they parked their car keys, parked their car, lost the car keys, left the milk out the fridge. They're getting a bit of a panic about it. They then demand to be referred to see a specialist. Again, this can be thousands of dollars worth of inefficiency there because they shouldn't even go there. They need to be reassured of primary healthcare. This diagram here shows the vision that we're building in there. So the idea is that patient comes into the clinic for a regular check. So this is when they do height and weight, blood pressure, and so on. They can take our 5-minute test. It then feeds into the system of the clinician. When they go into the consultation, the doctor has a piece of information about their brain health that they can then action. So are they fine, normal, healthy? Great, come back in a year. If there's an issue, can we work out why? If I can't explain it, I refer you to see the specialist. The specialist then gets a steady supply of early stage patients, which are very, very important for them because they can treat them. And like Stefan said, and I'll talk again in a second about the importance of this for the new drugs that are coming to the market for Alzheimer's disease. So these are huge blockbuster drugs, but at the moment, not enough people who would be eligible for them at this early stage hit the specialist to be diagnosed. And then we can do this at-home monitoring things. People are at home. They don't need to come into the clinic for us to see how they're getting on. They can daily, weekly, monthly do a test. Feeds back into the system. If your performance is fine, stay home. Don't come in. So this is an efficiency tool in terms of the healthcare. That's the way that it's looked at by the commissioners. This is the way it's looked at for there. So we give better care, but what drives the dollar value of this is the efficiency. So, like I said, we're working towards that in the NHS and other places as well. The other one is Stefan's mentioned, and I just alluded to there. For the first time ever, there are disease-modifying therapeutics in Alzheimer's disease coming to the market. SI have one, Biogen had a kind of half one that hasn't worked out so well. Lilly last week at the Alzheimer's Association conference, which I was at in Amsterdam, announced results. That's going to be coming soon. So these are coming to the market. But what is on the label of these drugs? What needs to happen is that they need to be a mild impairment patient. This is the first signs of deterioration in cognition. And then they need to go through a diagnosis process and have a certain protein, clustered in their brain. The system does not detect these early stage patients in any sort of scale with any sort of reliability. Using a technology like ours enables this to be done routinely without affecting, the time of the clinician. It doesn't affect the workflows and so on. Identify these patients, and then if more patients identify, the drug is worth more. Right, so very simple. It's a wide net. We catch more people rather than the really pathetic kind of narrow channel that people are coming through at the moment. So, having said all that, what's important when you are taking AI into the marketplace, particularly in healthcare? The first one is like, does it actually help anybody? So you don't need to have a solution that's looking for a problem. That's not really, really very helpful for anybody. But particularly in healthcare or other areas where you are helping an expert, you should not be telling them that you're going to replace them. You need to be giving them a way of enhancing their job for saving time, saving on menial tasks like paperwork and so on, giving information they can actually action that's mentioned, that's meaningful for them, fit into current workflows. You just shouldn't have to redefine everything in healthcare. That won't happen, and then also provide key metrics for performance management that matter to management. That's how you're going to get adopted. But that's really what we do. We try to make the system more efficient and give people a tool that helps them and changes the dynamic and has a big cost benefit for them. So yeah, just the last thing on us really, we are at a very interesting stage. We've been through validation, R&D. We've built the platform. We've done our regulatory stuff. We're now sitting where we're becoming commercially active. So we're bringing on clients, starting to generate revenue. But we have nice patented position, very usability, a lot of know-how in there. We are actually effectively a SaaS business, and that's what we'll work towards. So scaling and margins are good from that point of view. And yeah, we're entering a high growth phase, and it's very exciting, particularly now in this Alzheimer's situation, which seems to be leading a sea change in the way that neurodegeneration and Alzheimer's in particular is being addressed within the system. So that's us. We're on the CSE, and thanks for listening.
That's great, Thomas. Because you came in under time, uniquely, we get to do a bit of Q&A. I'm going to try and keep it short, just so that we can do a bit of catch up. But I have a couple questions, and I want to start out actually by just sort of, I think for the group here, I know you explained the technology, but I just want to explain in very tangible terms how it works. So their application is on like an iPad. And all you do as the user is click left or right to a series of pictures you see, whether you see an animal or not. So in like 5 minutes in a bit of like a game-like atmosphere that anybody can use. It's very simple, like kind of almost literally idiot-proof technology. You can get the same validity of diagnosis as spending sort of 30 to like an hour, 30 minutes to an hour with a a specialist neurologist who does this sort of cognitive assessment. So I just want people to appreciate the sort of better mousetrap that they've developed and how just tangibly how it works, so that they understand that. So that being said, you've got the Cognico has been approved. You've got some, people trying it out on I think in a relatively small scale to start, although you have signed some big insurance clients, notably in Japan. Can you talk about resistance you might be facing in the healthcare environment with doctors who sometimes see themselves as sort of like demigods who know more, sort of seeing themselves being replaced in some ways by a little 5-minute test or game that in some ways makes them somewhat redundant in the process? How's that going, and what are you facing on that front?
Yeah, look, I think resistance to change is always a thing with any new technology or process that comes out there. Now, I think that the biggest resistance to adoption for us in the clinical world was kind of a so what. So, clinicians say, well, it would be nice to do this, but if there's no treatment for something like Alzheimer's or dementia, then why would you want to know? Now, that would drive our chief medical officer crazy because he's an old age psychiatrist. And he was like, well, if you know about early decline, there's things you can do that are not, lifestyle things, exercise, eat better, do so on. So that would drive him crazy. But that seemed to be, not entirely prevalent, but certainly a common view. So that was a bit like, okay, it sounds very nice, but what would you do? The other thing I think is actually a sort of cautionary tale for small companies, which is you go in with your widget and you say, okay, you need to use this, it's going to improve your life. But actually it kind of doesn't, because without the kind of processes to surround it and being supported, it doesn't go anywhere. So all you're doing is creating an extra bit of work and an extra expense item, but it doesn't change what they do underneath. So that's really what we've ended up doing, is working very closely with clinical systems to say, okay, if you are going to take advantage of what we do, we need to build the pathway around it. And that slide I showed earlier kind of basically describes that. And that's what we're doing with the NHS. So people, you'll always find a few early adopters who are up for it and they're prepared to think about it. But the vast majority of doctors and anybody are somewhat resistant to doing anything that changes the norm. So you have to kind of create the environment for it. I think that you have catalysts for that. And I think this Alzheimer's disease drugs thing is really helping with that. Plus the fact we've been around longer and so on. But it is a challenge. And, many clinicians are very conservative. So, yeah.
And just another question about your IP. Like, what you're doing is unique in the space. And obviously you have patents and whatnot. But can you just talk about how you're going to be able to protect and own this space going forward? If you start, gaining meaningful traction, which I do expect in the next, in the near term and over the next couple of years, how do you think you're going to maintain your unique position once people realize that what you built, and maybe trying in some ways to replicate what you have?
Yeah, so look, the first thing, the patents thing is very important, and we are fortunate in that one of the first things we did as we were spinning the company up was to apply for patents for a lot of the key elements of our technology, and they were granted and approved. So we got them in Canada, US, Japan, China, and so on. So that's very important, and that's actually to do with the mechanism and the way that we actually do some processing of that. But sort of more important than that almost is the kind of know-how and the data that we have. So the quality data that I described earlier is proprietary to us. That's internal. So that's what drives the performance of this. What we're amassing a lot of at the moment is real world stuff. So these are where it's being used in different areas that all helps us to develop not just the AI models themselves, which we will continuously develop and improve, because that's really what the product is actually the model. But also, that allows us to improve the processes around it. What's the use case? How do we get into those? So they're there. And the final thing I'd mention, which is actually quite important, is to do with the way that you integrate. Now, we have developed our software, like you said, Stefan, in the first instance, the medical device works on iPads. That was our first choice. So it is software you download from the App Store. We give you a login. You can use it there and then, okay? So that makes it pretty flexible, but that's not flexible enough. So we're now building a whole set of APIs which allow our tech to be consumed by third-party platforms. So this is on the web, through any mobile device and so on. And then also on the back end is building up an integration unit for so health record systems, so digital health records. I think that once you start to embed yourself in these systems and become part of the habitual process, so the process I talked about, the fact that the data is delivered, straight to clinicians and so on, that is another actual sort of almost defensive position, because it's quite hard to unpick that later on, and people become very accustomed to using it. So I think those are the three areas that we take very seriously and seem to be what will do us a lot of benefit in the long run.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll thank you again, Thomas, and thank you for keeping it tight and staying under time. With that, I'm going to hand it off to Peter to introduce our next company. Take it away, Peter.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Stefan. And good afternoon, everybody on the line today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Peter Graham, Managing Director on the investment banking team at Echelon. And I'm very excited to have Peter Evans, CEO and Director of Extract One Technologies, join us today. Extract One trades on the TSX under ticker XTRA, and they're a leading AI-powered weapon detection company focused on perimeter screening and security. And really, they're replacing obsolete walk-through metal detectors with their smart gateway technology. Extract One has proven demand for their offering by winning contracts with leading live entertainment venues, manufacturing facilities, schools, casinos, and hospitals, which provide for a market opportunity of tens of billions of dollars in North America alone, and well north of $100 million on a global scale. In addition to these contract wins with leading entities, technology has been further validated by a number of external elements, including I'll call it government-led security validation, strategic operating partnerships with groups like the Oakview Group, and then even a strategic $10 million US investment that closed earlier this year from MSG Sports, which is the investment arm of Madison Square Gardens, who owns obviously their namesake stadium in New York City, and also the new Sphere in Las Vegas, in addition to other venues. So with that brief intro, I'm going to turn it over to Peter Evans to dig deeper into Extract One.
Okay, hopefully everyone can see this. I'm Peter, and thank you to the previous presenters, who talked about things like debugging and neuroscience and things like that. Let me change the tact and the approach a little bit here. How many people on this call are comfortable with guns in schools? Bit of a rhetorical question. How many people are comfortable with the number of mass shootings that are going on across North America? Probably not a lot. A child brought a gun into my daughter's school 6 weeks ago on a Monday with a gun and 50 rounds in a backpack when threatened to shoot it up. So this is personal to me. We're going to talk a bit about pragmatic AI. We're going to talk a bit about how AI can actually be applied in the real world to solve real world problems that are very topical right now. So let's click forward just a little bit. First off, let's a quote and a reference to Gilda Radner. What's all this I hear about AI? We've had a lot of discussions today about AI and all kinds of different applications to it. But if you think about AI, it just celebrated its 68th birthday. This is nothing new. It's kind of getting hyped up a lot in the industry these days, which is a good thing, because I think we're actually hitting kind of an inflection point. AI to me is just math. I'm an applied math guy. AI is very good at taking billions of data points and correlating them down to the one or two things that are important, right? Which is just math at massive scale. The interesting thing, though, is AI's got a little bit of a bad rap also, because it's been around for 68 years. And if you think of things, from my perspective, like the Gartner hype cycle, the Gartner hype cycle applies here. AI has struggled for many, many years. It's not new. It's not the last year. It's not the last 2 years. AI has been around for a long time. But like everything in the Gartner hype cycle, you go through this irrational, excitement, and then you go through a trough of disillusionment. And then you get back to pragmatic applications. You start to see those take hold as you start to get real world applications. Unfortunately, though, AI, like many other situations, has been a product looking for a problem. And what I've seen from my experience in the AI world is, for AI to be applicable, you have to have a purpose-built set of data. I think some of the other CEOs talked about that. You have to have a specific AI engine to correlate that data and a presentation layer to make sense of it to the audience that you're targeting. This is very, very different in all cases, and oftentimes as a product out versus a customer back approach, you're going to find that AI solutions create great engines looking for a problem to solve. In our case, we've built a purpose-built product to solve a specific problem in the marketplace. Now, what we're seeing is there's this perfect storm occurring for the place that we're sitting in. This year so far, as of May, the last time I looked at a database, there was 350 mass casualty events in North America from gun incidences. That was more than 250% more than there were days in the year when that statistic came out. So 2.5 mass casualties a day. This is defined as 4 or more people being shot. So, single incidents don't count. This is a pandemic that's not going away. It's very topical, and it's actually economy independent. Whether we're in a depression or a boom time, security issues continue to proliferate. We've also got significant societal unrest since the pandemic. And as a result, we're seeing more and more of these kinds of incidents and more risks. And I think many people would agree that they're not feeling safe in places where you used to feel safe. Marry this against a declining labor force and an approach to security that's always been defined by a labor-based business model. Labor-based business models do not scale. And as the security issues continue to proliferate, we cannot keep addressing an old world problem with old world solutions. Labor-based business models just don't scale, and they're reactive in nature. Now we've also got the application of AI, which is very, very good at dealing with scale at a mass level. And to deal with this issue, we find that we're sitting in the sweet spot of an intersection point or a fulcrum point as all these things come together. So what do? Every single person on this call has gone to Toronto Blue Jays baseball game. Maybe you've gone to a theater event. Maybe you've gone to some other event where you've had to go through a walk-through metal detector. That's shown on the left here. This is a typical experience of going through a walk-through metal detector. Metal detectors were developed about 80 years ago for the penitentiary system to make sure that prisoners were not carrying small little pieces of metal like bobby pins on them to open up the handcuffs. When 9/11 occurred, the marketplace said, we have got to start protecting places that are at risk or that are a threat, where people gather. Football stadiums, basketball stadiums, NHL stadiums, convention centers, train stations, airports, all of these sorts of things started to adopt the metal detector as the proxy for detecting weapons. The problem is, as the problem has escalated more and more, we see long lines, which in themselves are now becoming soft targets, such as what happened at the Ariana Grande concert in Manchester, where someone actually targeted the crowd, not the inside of the venue. On the right here, you see our technology, the Smart Gateway solution. The AI engines that propel this technology were developed by an organization out of Vancouver, Extract AI, which was building software for the Department of National Defense to identify specifically objects and classify what those objects were, particularly on cameras that were sitting on things like the belly of an F-16 fighter jet. The quality of that information is what's being put into these pillars, as you see this lady walking through, that go into venues like arenas, stadiums, schools, manufacturing, distribution locations. Individuals simply walk right through, just like they're walking down the sidewalk. If they have a weapon, a knife or a gun on them, it'll alert them and stop them. If they don't have a weapon on them, they just walk right through, like this lady did here with her purse or cell phone or watch or wallet or keys. We're digitally transforming what has historically been a labor-based business model. In the same way that we've seen things like Amazon completely reinvent the segment for retail, the same way that we've seen organizations like SoftBank and Nubank, or SoFi and Nubank, completely reinvent, the physical security or the physical marketplace for banking. So we're doing the same thing for physical security. Why do investors choose us? Interestingly, and we'll talk about this in a little more detail, it's a significant and growing addressable market, about $135 billion worldwide. We targeted a small segment of this marketplace a few years ago when we started to reinvent the company and target specific activities around weapons detection. The fortunate or unfortunate thing is the market's not waiting for us, and they grabbed us by the waist and they're pulling us faster down the highway into new segments than we originally imagined. There's high barriers to entry here. Not only are the AI models complex and they have to be purpose-built specifically for weapons, but there's sensor technology, physical technology that's very, very complex also. And many have tried and few have actually succeeded here. Our AI is purpose-built to solve this problem, and that is very, very unique to separate this as a cell phone versus this as a small knife. It's tested and proven technology with organizations like the Transport Safety Administration of the US, putting us into a lab for about a year and testing us, and we're now on the security screening product catalog for the TSA in the US. Very compelling growth and momentum for our company. In the first 3 quarters of this fiscal year, we announced 790% growth over the same 9 months of the prior year, and we don't see that trajectory changing at all. Most importantly to me, though, is there's a compelling customer ROI, and we'll talk about that in a moment. This is all useless unless the customer has a very compelling reason to be making the change from what their traditional approach was and doing something new. Let's talk about that ROI very simply. So every single one of us has experienced going through a walk-through metal detector, taking stuff out of your pockets, putting it in the bin, going through, alerting, taking off your belt buckle. It's annoying. It's invasive. It slows us down. I just bought $1,000 tickets on the 50-yard line to go see the New York Giants play. I don't want to be standing in line for 45 minutes to an hour waiting to get in while some idiot in front of me has forgotten to take the keys out of his pocket. Not a very good brand experience for the stadiums if that's what we're inflicting upon our fans, particularly as they return back from COVID and they're looking for engaging experiences once again. The average walk-through metal detector gets about 5 people through it a minute. With our solution, because we're only alerting on weapons, everyone just keeps walking in a fast stream. So optimized, we're probably getting about 40 to 50 people through a minute, or about 10x the number of people. What does this mean in terms of a case study? Well, overall, 7 to 10 times the patron throughput, up to 80% efficiencies in OpEx, because I no longer need as many lanes with as many security guards to manage the influx of people. And with advanced digital insights that are collected by the AI algorithms of the engines and presented to the customer, they can fine-tune their business operations to understand, why do I have lines at one place versus another? How can I use this data for improving concession sales? How can I use this data to understand one event's uniqueness versus another event's uniqueness, and using those data insights to further optimize their business model? So a specific example here is the Moody Center in Austin, Texas. We count amongst our customers arenas like Madison Square Gardens in the United States, the Sphere in Las Vegas, Kia Automotive, Hyundai, a very, very large electric auto manufacturing company, schools, hospitals, Acrisure Arena in Palm Desert, segment after segment after segment. The Moody Center is a very interesting one. This stadium opened up in April last year. It's probably one of the busiest, and actually has won an award for being the busiest stadium of its size, arena of its size, anywhere in the world. They hold about 17,000 individuals and about 225-ish events per year at present rate. Their security strategy was using 42 walk-through metal detectors and about 85 security staff per event. Now they're using about 9 lanes of our smart gateway and about 27 total security staff. So the $2.4 million that they were spending on security staff salaries every year has now been reduced to somewhere in the neighborhood of about $1 million. Now, they've got to pay us a little bit of money. Obviously, we're a for-profit organization, but they've saved themselves over $700,000. It's close to about $900,000 a year of OpEx, which has gone straight to the bottom line of EBITDA. More interesting and compelling, all of the fans who are going to that venue are in 55% faster, and the food and beverage sales have significantly increased. So from a value proposition point of view, the customer is saving a lot of money, happy fans who are in much faster, and are buying a lot more food and beverage, and they've got digital insights that they can continuously improve their overall business, all through the value of what AI has done to replace a historically labor-based approach to providing security in the environment. So what has this meant to us with this kind of a delivery and this kind of outcome? 2 years ago, coming out of COVID, we had a couple of pilots, a couple of contracts, really nothing to be too proud about. Looking forward, our business has accelerated. I mentioned some of the customers. We're sitting on about $86 million of qualified pipeline, and we're growing incredibly fast. Our original business model was to target stadiums and arenas, places that already had walk-through metal detectors, and we could shift the revenue or the business spend to something that was better, faster, cheaper. What we found, though, is these markets aren't waiting for us. One of the auto manufacturers I mentioned discussed the fact that 12 months before putting us in place, they had 3 gun incidences on the factory floor where fights broke out and someone pulled a gun. This is not an environment that I think anybody wants for their business model. We've also worked with very large retailers, one who had an employee come in, a disgruntled employee, and shoot 6 others. Unfortunately, this is the way of the world, and unfortunately, it's causing our business to be very, very successful. And I mentioned the growth numbers from our first 3 quarters of this year. These markets are coming to us faster than we originally planned. Our original plan was to go after stadiums and arenas very, very quickly. However, manufacturing, distribution centers, hospitals, healthcare organizations, as an aside, in New York, the nursing strike that occurred in New York City at the early part of this year in the January-February timeframe, the number one grievance from the nurses was, you need to protect us. You need to protect us at work. So hospitals, healthcare, schools, all the school systems right now in North America are now starting to deploy weapons detection solutions, but they're looking for something that does not make it feel like their kids are going to a penitentiary every day. They're looking for something that's fast, that's frictionless, the kids can enter into school just like they did before, and yet they're screened in a very covert manner. Accordingly, while we were targeting initially a $4.6 billion market, where we felt that we had a very good fit, the other markets aren't waiting. And the pull from the $135 billion customer segments has grabbed us by the collar and is dragging us much faster than we originally planned. And accordingly, we're scaling up our business to deal with that volume. So at the end of the day, unless you believe that weapons are going away, and unless you believe that a labor-based approach is the way to deal with security, and you do not want to digitally transform this industry in the same way we have with all the other segments, then you should probably be looking at us as a company that you want to work with as we start to continue to accelerate and deal with and manage this global problem. So with that, Peter, I'm going to wrap and open it up for any questions when you are all ready.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Peter. That was a great run through of Extract One, and again, really the value add that you bring for your customers, but also really the general population too. We do have a couple of questions. I'm going to start off with the first one that I think has been in queue for a while. It's around the DHS review period that you're going through, and there was a question, just any sort of update from that, and what sort of level are you looking for? It's a designated or certified, so I'll let you answer that.
Peter, I'm smiling to myself because clearly one of our investors who's on the call is on the call today. I'm guessing it's someone like Doug Shull or someone else who asked that question on every single call that I'm on. And the answer is we are knee deep in the Department of Safety Act activities. We're going for a designation level. That was at the recommendation of the DHS. Originally, we were applying for a DTED, and they said the broad efficacy and proven value of our solution in a broad set of customers warrants us going for the higher level of DHS Safety Act. Unfortunately, the American government moves slowly, as anyone who submitted their IRS tax forms back in April can confess to. And so we are pushing on the government as hard as we can. And most importantly to me, we've got customers, strong voice customers, who are also pushing on the DHS as hard as they can too.
Excellent. Thank you for that update. Just to bring it back a bit to the AI component, you've obviously mentioned that your addressable market, you're being dragged into new areas. Given that there are different, I guess, products that patrons or employees would be walking through these varied sort of different venues that you'd be addressing, is there any changes or requirements for the AI where, from a learning perspective, that it can't translate between the different venues, or is there a baseline that's consistent? And again, as you move into these different venues, it continues to improve?
Well, I think, Peter, the nice thing about our AI platform, and it's true AI, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent. I always kind of laugh to myself a little bit these days, and I'm sure some of the other CEOs could comment on the same thing. it's fascinating to me, the proliferation of the word AI, because it's hot these days. But unfortunately, the marketing people have got a handle on that. They want all the traffic to their website, so they sprinkle AI over everything they do, whether your company is true AI or not. I keep expecting to go to the grocery store and see a box of cornflakes that says now with AI, And so having said that, I'm proud of the fact that because of what we did with the Extract AI company, and that acquisition, we really have got a very interesting purpose-built engine that's very flexible and very malleable to deal with different environments. And so what we're very proud of saying is that we don't have to force fit the customer into our business model or our product solution flow. It can actually adjust and fit into the uniqueness of the customer's unique requirements. One of our customers, Kia, said it best. They checked out another technology and they had to completely redesign a multi-billion-dollar operation that generates $1 million of revenue every minute to fit around the other technology's limitations. They dropped that, they dropped us in, and they found that we fit right into their business operation flows without changes because of the malleability and flexibility of our solution.
Perfect. Great. Being cognizant of time, Peter, I want to thank you very much. Great to have you on and present the Extract One story. So again, really do appreciate you taking the time today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rob Goehring to introduce Fobi AI. Rob, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Peter Graham. And thank you, Peter Evans. Your case study on the stadium economics was fantastic. And fortunately, it's a nice lead into our next speaker, who also deals with stadiums and high-profile events, albeit in a very different application. With that, we are very pleased to have Rob Anson. Rob is the CEO and chairman of Fobi AI. He brings an impressive track record, having worked on strategic product development for global leaders, including the likes of Amazon and Walmart and Air Canada. However, I believe you will very clearly see from his presentation that Rob's passion lies in founding and building technology startups to address market needs. Fobi is not a newcomer to AI with a deep history using AI, data intelligence, and real-time analytics for its clients, where it deploys a SaaS model using both B2B and resale channels. As you will see in Rob's presentation, Fobi also boasts a marquee list of current clients. Rob, we welcome you and we thank you to today's conference. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to try to catch up on some of the time and break it down so people truly understand what AI means and why it's used today and how it applies to our business. I've heard a lot of great presentations today, and I think some of the key things is really why and what does it mean at the end of the day. For us, when I started this company back in 2017, I was focused on the world of big data. Big data was creating a big challenge and a bottleneck for most organizations. Most operators today live in a world of silos and disjointment. We were looking at how do we provide true real-time connectivity. And with that, I'll use a stadium as one of our partners put it. We live in a Swiss cheese environment. We do not have understanding of our business at a whole core. So we look at our world today in bits and pieces: food and beverage, ticketing, parking, merchandising, online. They have a plethora of silos within their organization. I looked at building an automated platform that provided true connectivity across the organization, both online and offline. That was the key to our early stage. With the help of AWS and some of our key partners at Apple and Google, we built a connected digital wallet and DMP platform, which is data management. That is really the key for us, was providing real-time connectivity and automation from a data perspective. When we look at the world of applied or vertical AI, as I've heard today, this is where we sort of stand out from most others as we've grown our models with our enterprise customers, specifically focused around data automation, around, of course, data warehouse projects, and more importantly, how do we unlock and leverage and monetize the world of data? Not from the perspective of selling data, of course, as we hear from Facebook and others, but truly from a business operational perspective around margins of profitabilities, driving recency, frequencies, and spend. Our company has grown very rapidly over the last 2 years since commercializing our products. We now operate in 5 countries through our aggressive M&A strategies. And of course, as we see, we've now gained up to 150 plus countries. We've issued now over 100 million passes, 138 million, actually, in fact. So it shows to the scalability of our products of which we built. Our digital wallet business has grown exponentially over the last 2 years. The relevancy of our product and tech stack by combined applied and vertical AI with machine learning is obviously very ripe and relevant to today's environment. Through COVID, we saw great benefit as we saw 25 years, I feel, of digital transformation change. So we've caught sort of a wind, I would say, based on our early investment and positioning of going very wide, very long now, and very focused into particular verticals. We do boast a great deal, and here's just a few, of course, window dressing of our partners. And I'd like to take this opportunity to explain how AI is being leveraged and how we're solving problems here. And I'll use this here to start with the Oscars. The Oscars approached us back at the end of 2020. They were looking to develop their own proprietary digital ticketing system. Of course, with that comes a lot of fraud detection, verification for users. We embedded a lot of various other technologies around facial recognition, a lot around NFC, of course, in partnership with Apple at the event. We just start to look at how do we make business as easy as possible. And these safe, secure applications of which we've built provide the utmost in automation and true real-time interoperability, which of course lead to higher security and access, of course, to large-scale events, as we see here with our other partners. I would say that our other key focus for us when we look at the world of security and venue management is with the NASDAQ facility. So using our Alt ID solutions, we provide the world of entry and access across multiple of different venues worldwide now. And NASDAQ being a big focus for us as an early use case partner around access and entry for employees, conferences, floor access to ring the bell, etc. We start to look at where the world is going. And to me, that power engine of big data, machine learning, and now AI will accelerate growth. We will see growth in industries we've never witnessed before. We've seen tremendous uptick already. We've seen more inbound lead generation the first quarter than we saw the previous 2 years. So it speaks to obviously the relevancy and positioning of our product stack. We live in the world of data, of course. I saw the world of wallet being, of course, tied to digital identity, digital currencies as we see the way of the world going. But to me, it became the access channel, the activation channel for venue operators, for game day activation, for NHL teams, access and security as we see for Oscars or NASDAQ. But more importantly, it means to personalization. How do we become a one-to-one? We leverage a lot of account management through chatbots and various engagement platforms that we've built and partners of ours. Of course, how now we look at models now that can be deployed rapidly and truly at scale. We've greatly benefited, as Rob said, from our early channel partnerships, of which we built with the likes of NTT Data and TELUS, and procurement deals that we secured in them selling our products nationally in their countries within Japan and here in Canada. I think the key here is really agility. Today's marketplace, you need to build to have an approach of agile. Connecting and enhancing existing IT infrastructure and assets has always been key to our product messaging. And I think it's put us in a position of problem solving. Fundamentally, technology has no value to me unless it solves that problem. The problem here has been the world of data and connectivity, and more importantly, application and output. And that's where we are very, very strong with applied AI, and of course with our vertical AI integrations with our partners. We see here with Mercedes-Benz, Allianz, and AXA aren't mentioned here, but providing that enterprise data solution now for their membership base has been a big part of our business cycle and growth. To get through this quickly, we are SaaS, B2B, as Rob mentioned. We've got very strong channel partners of ours. Of course, white label now with a fully commercialized product has become a very big opportunity for us. And strategic vertical participation is a big one. We've leveraged our technology now to gain ownership in other joint venture opportunities, which enables us to scale very quickly across regions that we don't have existing business of today. I think this is the key one here. There's a lot of great stories, of course, out there. There's a lot of, let's call it ambulance chasing to be nice, out there as well. We've been very, very true to who we are. We've focused on our early days of building out BI and data infrastructure. We've now moved into a marketing tech solution and data intelligence platform. We've commercialized our products, and now we're clipping along here and converting and renewing our enterprise deals. We're at a 90% SaaS model, recurring revenue model, and I'm very happy to report that we are 100% on all of our renewals for our enterprise clients. We see, of course, a growth, very conservative growth forecast based on our renewals and our most recent RFP wins. That put us at a very strong position. Our Q4 at June 30th will come in at cash flow positive. We will beat our forecast and put us in a very strong position of growth moving forward. I think when I look at the focus here of where we go, what's next, we're seeing tremendous growth and upside in travel and tourism, airports, human movement, of course, full of security, data touch points, bringing these together now, utilizing our wallet technology and our best of breed data intelligence to inform security, to enable travelers to have one credential versus dozens of pieces of paper and documentations. Transportation is becoming a very big part of our business as well now, with tremendous growth. We've seen 40% growth in airlines over the last quarter alone. HR management, once again, multitude of different silos from a data standpoint, creating an all-in-one user interface for people to onboard and manage their operations and systems. And once again now, sports entertainment. Sports entertainment has become a very big opportunity, and as to Peter's comments previously here, something we're being dragged into. The digital transformation, future-proofing their businesses, providing true connectivity and real-time activation is a big, important one there. I would say the ESG. ESG is something that is very interesting to me because we live in a world of physical. For many, many years, we've all got physical credit cards in our pockets. We've all got loyalty cards. By means of replacing these, of course, now by leveraging our wallet technology, And as I said, the uptick that we've seen now at 138 million plus users on our platform worldwide speaks, I think, to the volumes of where the world's going. Here in North America, of course, like always, we're a little bit behind, but based on our inbound lead generation and our pipeline, North America is definitely set to not just catch up, but make leaps and bounds forward here in 2024. So I'll leave it there and not try to go too deep into the weeds. I'll open it up for any Q&A, and hopefully I made up a little bit of time on your side, Rob.
Very good. Thank you, Rob. And you are within time, so we will ask you a few questions before we expand into the broader Q&A session. The first question I would have for you is, can you explain the economics behind the digital wallet? You've explained that you are a SaaS company, but could you talk to those economics?
That's a great one. We have a monthly usage fee. So ultimately, we have got monthly usage, and we've got transaction fees built into that. So as the platform grows, the user base grows, obviously the associated revenues grow with that. Now we're seeing great growth as well in transaction models and fees in the retail environments, as we said, in stadiums and airports.
Very good. And there was a question about your expansion in Japan. Could you perhaps update us on that?
Yeah, obviously Japan, very mobile centric. We're seeing a great traction and early uptick here in momentum. There's a few things that I can't speak to that aren't publicly disclosed yet, but stay tuned for some of the material updates on Japan and others. That it's something that's been very well received. We once again went the way of channel. Obviously for us, Ian Cameron, our former vice president of marketing, spent 19 years at Epson in Japan. Our relationships, extensive relationships, and procurement deal with entity data has played a big part in it, as well as Dentsu and Hakuhodo, two of the prominent agencies in Japan that have played a big part in our early successes. And data is definitely a challenge in the Japanese marketplace. So we were kind of right place, right time when it comes to a lot of the data opportunities from warehousing to applications.
Very good. And we have just two more quick questions before we drop off or cross over. Could you update us on your 5-year, $10 million contract win with BevWorks?
Yeah, we've collected our fees and payments from BevWorks. I think it's a great opportunity as we look at, we've recently, people are aware of, hired David Nichols, former CMO for Anheuser-Busch, is now leading our beverage alcohol division. We've got, obviously, as we've already reported, data license agreements with Nielsen IQ and many others now that we're exploring from brand manufacturer level. Liquor is where we did start. It's where we cut our teeth in the world of big data and intelligence. So it's something we're very familiar with, and I'm very excited that we've gone back to it in not just in a small way, but with a big splash with someone as competent as David. And obviously the BevWorks fits nicely into that piece. And as I said, stay tuned for a couple other announcements around that from a data perspective with our data exchange, which is a key piece to the business. They don't have access to the insights. So having our Fobi data exchange where they can query and build their own questions and prompts, of course, around the data for marketing attribution and measurement, competitive landscape, sell-through, and the rest of the micro trends that are in the markets today, provides them better clarity and profitability on their margins. And inventory plays a big part of that, of course.
Cool. And then the last question, potentially the toughest and most sensitive question. Do you have a favorite golfer between Nick Taylor and your partner, Adam Hadwin?
That's a great question. Yeah, I got to go with Adam because of his wife, Jessica. They're a great family. Obviously, we've gained a lot of exposure. For those that don't know, Adam and his agent approached us last year, I guess almost 2 years ago now, about creating their own fan pass. They wanted to take the old player's card, if you will, and create a digital fan club. So we built out a fan pass for Adam. It's gained us great exposure, as you've seen his success, and even with Nick winning, Adam was kind of the big highlight and showstopper there with what happened after the celebration. So it's been a great partnership for us. It's opened up a lot of other doors and avenues with other actors and musicians and stuff that we're working on right now that will launch. And I think it really speaks to the testament of what we built here. We've built an agnostic platform that's really vertically agnostic as well. The same technology is used in 17, 18 different ways right now. So I think it's part of the reason why we've been able to scale so quickly. And now starting to see the success and ramp up here. I think when we look at Adam and Nick and some of these projects that we've done, we've always looked at things from a different lens. How do we create a market differentiator? How do we try new things? Then fail fast, learn, and then, of course, apply to commercialize. Microservices and agility were very key for us early days. As I said, getting into these projects, winning RFPs, and then, of course, servicing. Everything to me is always about service.
Very good. Thank you, Rob. And I see you on the screen, Sasha. Hopefully your voice has come back to you. Could you perhaps discuss the significant announcements you've made recently with respect to Azure and Snowflake and how that may fit into your service roadmap?
Yeah, sure. So one's a product announcement, one of our technologies, which is the Snowflake technology, and one's just a partnership with Microsoft. So for clarity, we work with Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Snowflake, Click as deployment partners and go-to-market partners in a variety of different capacities around the world. I mean, we service about 250 customers around the world, about 600 people. So, we're deeply rooted and embedded with those organizations in terms of how we collaborate and work together alongside other ones like Palantir and DataRobot. The the Azure OpenAI announcement is we were selected as one of their kind of pilot partners to deploy enterprise-grade ChatGPT capabilities within some of our customer environments. That was the Blinds to Go example that I used there. So that's a fairly significant announcement for us in terms of how we're able to go to market with them. And to give you some context, that text-based application has resonance across, I would say close to 3/4 of our customer base. So as a massive kind of nod of the cap to us in terms of the work that we're doing there. As it relates to Snowflake, so we have a application that is a graph analytics application that sits within Snowflake's compute environment, which helps customers who are using Snowflake, which is, again, one of the largest cloud and cloud computation service providers of a multi-billion-dollar market cap. And our application and our joint go-to-market with them helps customers that use Snowflake to better understand their customers' data through lookalike modeling, clustering, and then privacy-safe data sharing. So that's a huge addressable market for everything in technology, publishing, retail, consumer packaged goods. Anybody who has customer data is looking and using Snowflake to be able to better analyze and mobilize that data. And our graph analytics technology is very, very new and very, very high value in that instance. And it drives consumption on Snowflake, which is a huge kind of priority for them now that they have this really strong install base. So, we're kind of knee deep with the big tech players in helping us collectively go to market. And they tend to like our customer lists pretty well. So yeah, thanks for the leading question. That was great.
Thanks, Sasha.
Can I chime in? Are we moving to the broader question period?
So we are broad in your questions, Stefan. Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, there's a question in the chat for Thomas at Cognitivity that I want to just expand on. It was a question about the impact of if you have a coffee or the time of day the test is taken. I've actually used the test. There's a direct-to-consumer test that you can get access to, and I tested it on myself. And obviously, if you use it before and after you have a coffee, you actually get slightly different scores. And I'm even going ahead and say I tested myself after having too many drinks one Friday night. I was hungover and actually was able to measure my impairment the next morning when I was hungover. But I wanted to ask Thomas more about the use case of that level of sensitivity potentially for monitoring patients who are on these, for instance, these Alzheimer's drugs. These are very expensive drugs. They cost, upwards of $25,000 a year US to keep somebody on them. And obviously they want to be monitoring patients to make sure that the drugs are having an impact. Can you just talk about a potential use case there and how your test could be used in a practical way?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that the first thing is that the performance of the test, its ability to pick up on small changes in your sort of brain performance, is a very important attribute of the test. So, as to answer the question earlier, you can pick up whether you had coffee, you haven't had sleep. It doesn't put you into a different clinical bracket, but you have a different performance score, and people will have their own range, which will have, between a certain figures, there'll be certain deviations from it. That'll be your normal signature. And really where we're going with that is by understanding normal cognition, your change into impairment or return to normal functioning is really around changing in your own personal patterns rather than you fitting a larger trend. Now, to address specifically what you asked about in the Alzheimer's drugs thing, it's a very important point and a very good question because, the CMS in the US has basically said, okay, we will pay for these drugs under Medicare and Medicaid as long as you feed back into a registry the effectiveness of these. Okay. Now, nobody's going to be able to go for regular PET scans or MRI type things. So having a sort of very simple, very sensitive, very reliable measure that can be automatically fed back into the registry for these is very important, and that's certainly something that we're working on at the moment. But yeah, look, for monitoring that's what you want. You want to be able to look at trends. You want to be able to see small changes in people's cognitive function over time to tell whether it's working or not. Not just from an individual drug, but for a specialist who has got a patient who's under a course of treatment, rather than bringing them back in as an outpatient into the clinic all the time, which is expensive and time consuming. Leave them at home. They can then do this test at home. If you start looking like you're not where we expect you to be, bring it back in, because the brain is a very, very good general measure of kind of health generally. It's like a leading indicator. It's the first thing that changes. It's the first thing that recovers. So it's a very, very good way for people to have really great feedback on where patients are going without actually seeing them.
Well, I thought I might just jump back in here with a question for Rob Goehring. In your screening, you identified the risk of chat GPT bolt-ons where there's the risk of replication. With a number of companies, we see partnerships formed with Microsoft, Google, etc. Where we see a partnership, is it a natural assumption that the risk of replication is thereby reduced, i.e. these companies only form partnerships where they see IP?
I think, great, it's a very good question. I think generally speaking, yes, to get a proper formal partnership, you have to go through a process and be vetted. Also, I think, some of the awesome examples today all refer, broadly speaking, to be able to use the existing chat GPT or underlying GPT for a large language model, and then applying that to typically private corporate data or other private data sets. And that kind of solves the problem of uploading all this private data into a public cloud and having it accessible. So I think that's a phenomenal use of the power of a chat GPT or a GPT-4 backend, is taking it, leveraging all the great work OpenAI has done to make that model valuable, and then siloing your data and making it private, contained, secure, and now being able to do things with it. That's a great enterprise or vertical application. and generally never one that will be replicated by an open AI.
Thank you.
I sort of wanted to ask a question of Sasha at Now Vertical, and it's more around the mindset of the enterprises that you deal with and how quickly they're adopting here. Because I think there's sort of a sense out there that everybody's just diving into this new world, and I think enterprises tend to be very, very risk adverse. How quickly are they adopting, and could there be possibly disappointments as to the speed they move at? Because I think you see a pretty good broad section of enterprises in your client base.
Yeah, for sure. I think that the sensitivity to the publicly trained data sets or applications that you see in the kind of pop culture media currently, I think is an area of, there's a level of scrutiny that organizations that are doing their own data science or machine learning work kind of see when they look at some of these publicly trained applications. And there's reams of examples in terms of the difference between public data training sets and then like actual private training sets. So the good news is that most of the organizations and enterprise and governments that at least we work with have a level of maturity around the kind of foundational requirements of doing any type of AI in industry and government, which is around big data, data science, data engineering. So there's a level of sophistication that already exists, especially in the Fortune 1000s and the large governments or the large kind of, I don't know, call it top 20 economies in the world. So there's an appetite for it, but you have to address, and this is the 4 big things that we focus on addressing, which is the data, right? So you have to be able to train these models or deploy these models on the right data sets. And most organizations struggle with understanding that. So we help them with that around data discovery, technology, and solutioning. There's talent gaps. So many organizations, IT, people in IT, data science, they're very few in an organization and largely kind of oversubscribed, overutilized. So you have to solve for that. The risk piece is enormous. So the risk around not only just like GDPR style or HIPAA style kind of legislation is one form of risk, but the other risk is if you don't understand what's going into your models, you run risks of building models or artificial intelligence that is artificially wrong. And you don't want necessarily machines to be trained on the wrong information and therefore build the wrong models. And there's very little tolerance for black box applications in enterprise and government. So you have to be able to interpret the model. And then you have to target returns. So if you're able to help to address that and orchestrate things, appetite is huge, right? But it has to be against use cases that are valuable, which is why we focus so much on things like, churn analysis for, key customers. They'll pay for that stuff all day long, and they'll do it in a recurring way. But you have to demonstrate that you're able to deploy these systems and these solutions, because this is just a natural evolution of all the investments that they've made around IT, big data, and the engineering systems that they have in place. So it's a well-defined and relatively mature market, believe it or not. The GPT functions in the public kind of sphere, I think, are slightly misleading in terms of how companies and governments use artificial intelligence. Hopefully that answers the question.
No, that's great.
If I could add to that, I've got a couple points that Sasha just touched on, I think that are very, very valid. I think for us, we've seen great success at a government level now internationally in a lot of our enterprise clients, because you can't just show up and we're a new AI company. You have to have your ISO, you have to be GDPR compliant, your SOC 2. So there's a lot of certification that goes along with this. To Sasha's point, these organizations are incredibly up to speed as to what's out there. There is a tremendous appetite for it. It's finding the right partners that de-risk their opportunities, to your point, Christine. And I think the biggest one here and the most important one it's always about value realization. At the end of the day, we're going to make significant investment into this. What do we expect to get out of it? That's the great one now that I'm starting to hear, is that we're moving forward because we identify value realization. Here's what this means to our organization. I think that's the biggest thing. I think when I hear and see a lot of these presentations today, they've got all tremendous value in use case application into the world at a global level, not just here, of course, at home in North America. So it's very exciting to see some of the opportunities that have been put together here today. So thank you.
Okay, if I ask to Thomas, can you please talk about what are the unique regulatory challenges that using artificial intelligence in a healthcare setting entails?
Yeah, it's a kind of an interesting area because it's kind of new. And I think from our point of view, what we see is actually a kind of a lack of joined up thinking between different regulatory agencies. And one of the things they seem to struggle with is the idea that it is not a kind of one size fits all approach. So, it's really very sensitive to what you're using it for, the kind of claims you're making, what the end, the outcome of the use of it will be. So we find that when we go to different regulatory agencies, we have to kind of, work with the different set of, shall we say, criteria that they go to. Now, I would say that actually, I don't know that it's just us, but, the FDA and the US are actually quite good relatively for this. They are, listening to people, they're trying to get their head around it and to make this happen. The way that we go around it is really before we do any submission, actually much earlier in the process that we go ahead, we contact the agencies and say, okay, this is what we're planning to do. This will be the design of our studies. These are the way that we're going to use the data. Is this going to be acceptable to you? Please make any comments at this stage. And that's exactly what we did with the FDA, and that worked very, very well, actually. And they are certainly up for those discussions. But yeah, I think that the big challenge is really around the agencies understanding the kind of relative use of each one, the relative importance of the information that comes, and being somewhat consistent about it.
If I could jump in with a question for Peter, I think Peter Evans is still around with us. If you could talk to the competitive landscape, what you're seeing, given this massive opportunity to get more advanced technologies into stadiums, like who are you kind of going up against, and maybe talk about how your tech is differentiated from what you see out there.
Yeah, so Mike, thank you for the question. I much appreciate it. And from we're asked online if somebody did. There's really sort of, I think, 4 or 5 different approaches. One approach is do nothing. And we often see this with customers because it's always hard to put a quantification around security sometimes. A casino general manager says, we've got to do this. And the CFO says, let's go put the money into 4 more slot machines. So you always see a little bit of that situation. Then you've got old traditional walk-through metal detectors and wands that we all have seen and experienced before. And there's some people who continue to buy those. Although the patron experience is getting worse and worse and worse, and people are kind of, I think, passively rebelling against that. In terms of direct competition for what we do, everyone, if you talk to the chief security officer of the NBA, a gentleman named Leon Newsom, he and I talk weekly. He'd say everyone talks about the big 3, us being one of those big 3. There's a solution in the marketplace, which is from one of the walk-through metal detector companies. And essentially they saw us and they said, we're going to be obsoleted unless we do something. So like all walk-through metal detectors we've all experienced, they just turn down the sensitivity. It's like turning down the volume. So it's not going to alert on a cell phone, but it's also not going to alert on knives and small guns and large guns even. So it's got a little bit of security theater, but it's cheap. So if you want just a cheap solution, you want the Big Mac of security, you'd go with them. Okay? It's kind of like a Big Mac. Is it really food? It's kind of like asking a question. Is it really security in this day and age? I don't think anybody wants the liability associated with putting in the cheap solution and then something negative happens, because the due diligence and the discovery will show that you knowingly bought a suboptimal solution that put your patrons at risk. On the other end of the spectrum, there's one competitor who's been around for 10 odd years. They're probably got the largest incumbency out there. Very, very expensive, very, very heavy. I equate it to being the BlackBerry, this first smartphone that was out there. So they created a market. We all had a smartphone. We all had a BlackBerry, but it kind of sort of worked, but not great, but it was very expensive. Our big advantage versus both those customers is what we've done with what we've been talking about on this call, AI and our software platform. We built a true software platform that's purpose-built to do this, that's got extensibility to it. So today's problem and what people are writing checks for is for weapons detection. Nobody wants guns in schools. Nobody wants guns in arenas. And we solve that problem uniquely, inexpensively, and incredibly effectively. As I said, we're the only company that's been verified by the TSA to provide that highest degree of security. But the software platforms allows us to do so many more things, right? We can integrate into it ticketing. We can integrate into it facial recognition for banned patron identification. We can integrate into all sorts of things. Retailers have come to us and said, can you alert on weapons on the way in and alert on stolen goods on the way out? So the extensibility to address problems of the future and layer more and more and more software, SaaS software models stacked on top of the incumbency is our biggest differentiator, and particularly from an investor point of view.
No,
Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Peter. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries.
And,
My
and,
pleasure.
and maybe one last question, sort of more broad question, and this might be good to start with Rob Goehring on this. Like, what scares you the most out there? What from an investor point of view, where do you see the most risk and the most concern?
No, it's a great question. I think from an investor point of view, and I think a lot of folks have mentioned this today, is just they're like in these markets, everyone piles in and creates a lot of noise in the market. And I think that we've seen that in the capital markets, we saw that. You see that with the crypto and marijuana before that, all these kind of things. So I think in capital markets, we always run the risk of there being a lot of Me Too players and people that kind of jump in and create a lot of noise and kind of take the quality capital and disperse it a bit. So I think really this is a hugely beneficial reason to have a program like this today, where we can start to actually have these deeper discussions around AI and business models and real companies building real things. I think that's the scariest thing. From a technology standpoint, for again, capital markets, public market investors, again, I'd be, the long-term time horizon investments that they're going to take 5 to 10 years to materialize. Those are just a challenge, to be totally honest. I think those are difficult, and the world is capitalized with, again, certain venture investors and private equity companies that are structured to take these very long-term views. I think, again, from an applied AI standpoint, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. I would echo a lot of what Sasha said earlier around the talent gap and the lack of people. And what I see in, again, a lot of work I do with the BC Tech Association, all these companies we kind of interact with, is we are seeing enterprises, governments, everyone asking about AI and adopting it. So the more that we can find these applied vertical and kind of enterprise solutions, I think those are the better choices for investors.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think, Rob, that's a really, really good point, particularly your first point. I spent a little bit of time in the marketing world, and the number one thing for marketing guys is to drive as much traffic as to your website as you can. So you grab what's hot. In the cybersecurity world, where 1 year was exfiltration, the next year was data leakage prevention, the next year it was whatever. And the marketing guys glom on to whatever that hot word is, and they sprinkle it all over all their marketing materials. And it creates unnecessary confusion in the industry. What is an AI-driven solution? What isn't? What is simply pattern matching? And I think it does a bit of a disservice to the industry. It's a really good point you make.
I just want to draw some attention to William had a great question in the chat, and it was surrounding the Monk debates on AI and is it an existential threat to humanity? My personal perspective, and coming out of the quantum computing and like advanced hardware and software space for the past 2.5 years before joining now, I'm very much in alignment with Jan LeCun, and I think that the AI solutions and systems that we have here today are very narrow and don't have anywhere near the aptitude of human intelligence, let alone cat intelligence. And I think trying to stop or slow down the work in this space is nonsensical. I think that if you think about really simple applications like teaching somebody to drive a car, I think it's something like teenagers, the odd time, I think about 20 hours of drive time until they realize it. And in spite of the hundreds of millions of dollars and thousands of hours that we have with, self-driving cars, I mean, the brittleness of the models as it relates to those types of applications are really, they're really apparent, and we have so much ground to make up before we get to anything that's going to be kind of existentially a problem. Misinformation, we've got more issues with social media and misinformation than we do with AI. So, and there's solutions for that. So I think that a lot of this stuff, my personal perspective, is just, I think it's a little bit just trying to get attention for the wrong reason. So I actually don't think we have an existential threat with regards to AI, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I'll jump in really quick. I would tend to agree. I mean, for those who don't know Yann LeCun, he's the head of AI at Meta, Facebook. So in terms of looking at mass amounts of social data, that's a very interesting position for him to take. I think it is important, and I know a lot of us on this meeting, ethical AI is an important thing. Explainable AI has been talked about a lot today. We joined a program called Cascade AI, which is sort of a Pacific Northwest approach to making sure that the ethical use of data. I was on a panel in January with the Vancouver Information Privacy Society about a lot of these topics, and there's absolutely concerns. You look at companies like Clearview AI that did a lot of the facial recognition technology for law enforcement. Their utilization of people's faces without you getting permission. We've seen lots of examples of that, but generally speaking, I think we're getting a lot more net benefit out of the AI tools. There's always the horrible use cases out there. Again, I think Warren Buffett made the quote about, like nuclear power is amazing for the world. It could kill everyone, but it doesn't. It's all about how we use it. And I've seen the vast majority of companies using these technologies very appropriately. There will be guidelines and guide rails in place, but also I think the other argument that was made is that talk about a moratorium on North America stopping. Well, what if we stopped and everyone else in the world didn't? There's a concept in AI of cumulative or accumulated advantage, where the snowball rolls down the hill and gets bigger and bigger. If you stop for a while, the other snowballs keep going. So there's an important element for us to be able to stay on top of these technologies as well, but also maintain the societal and ethical impacts of it for sure.
That was great, and that's probably a great high point to sort of tie up the conversation. I know we've gone a little bit over our time here, but again, I just, on behalf of Rob Goff and the rest of the team here, I just really like to thank all of you for joining us today and presenting your companies and your ideas. Again, if anybody wants further information on any of these companies, please reach out to myself or Rob Goff, and we're happy to set up one-on-ones or direct meetings and provide further information. One last thing I would like to say is there are 5 publicly traded companies here. We all think they look very, very interesting. Rob Goehring was kind enough to join us today to sort of share his expertise on the space as a whole. But he's also bringing public a very interesting little company in the cybersecurity space, Wisr.ai. We didn't spend a lot of time talking about it today because it is not public yet, but if anybody wants further information there, very, very happy to provide it. And I think just a really interesting company in itself that we're working on bringing public soon. But on that note, yeah, again, thanks everyone for joining us, and hopefully you found it useful.
Bye.